Okay.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the time is here. The long await is finally over. Tomorrow will be here before we know it, but before then, I've assembled a panel that's sure to keep you occupied before that time. I'm joined tonight by a very special panel of guests: Jant Sports, Texas Homer, Nino's Corner, Fanatic Perspective. Gentlemen, before we can kick this off, as always, I need y'all to hop down, let everybody know where they can go find all of y'all's great content.
Find me at Twitter, Gent716, YouTube, Gent Sports for the most part, and I'm excited. I'm super excited, man. This is the Avengers right here, so I'm ready to go.
You can find me at Twitter at the Texas Homer, and then just on YouTube, type in Texas Homer. You'll be able to find my channel. Just dropped a video on Tuesday. You'll be able to find that for Bama.
Fanatic Perspective. You can find me on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the whole bit. We just did a video live with Homer talking about his preview. I did a live with Jance earlier this week, kind of, vetting, feeling things out. But now we get to really get down and break down with the entire crew. So I'm excited.
What's up, folks? It's Nick Battle, a.k.a. Nino's Corner, man. Find me on YouTube, Twitter, Nino's Corner. I'm everywhere, man.
Yeah, and look, this is kind of a rare occasion because for me, I usually come into these videos wearing a neutral shirt as always, and this evening it's kind of decided that I had to represent with all the fine gentlemen in front of me representing. But we have got a lot to break down in this game. So many fans around college football, whether they're a fan of either of the two programs playing in Austin, Texas tomorrow, are going to be tuned in because why wouldn't you? There are so many storylines. Whenever you look at this game, we've had a full offseason of waiting. What's the one thing that you were the most excited about in the offseason? And through the progression of camp, what is the new thing you're the most excited about? Jance, I'm going to start with you.
Oh, definitely for us, it was definitely got to be the offensive line. It's the one thing I still consider a question mark, really. I feel like the Utah State game didn't really truly answer our questions all throughout camp. We wanted to see the progression of this offensive line because that was the one thing holding us back from winning a national championship. But yeah, I mean, I definitely wish Javon Cohen that speedy recovery because obviously mental health is a very, very important thing, and obviously if you can't get it right there, man. Obviously, so that's one thing I always kind of hope that hopefully Cohen can get that speedy recovery. But until then, Kendall Randolph is now the guy who's, normally not that guy. He's only filled in for depth purposes, emergency purposes, and in this case, that's what he has to do for this game. 6-year guy that's normally a, in the line, type of tight end that we can only use in goal line situations. He's been, he's a 6-year guy. So yeah, now he has to kind of cover that in. How well will he do until Cohen comes back? I am not too particularly sure. That's more of a question mark there. I think with Tyler Steen, for the most part, had an okay game, but obviously you saw some flaws within his game. Darren Darcourt, he's got the flaws right there. Excellent run blocker, not really so much of a pass blocking situation. So the offensive line, it's a question mark. We got question marks all around there. And that's the one thing I really wanted to see kind of addressed. And I was excited to see what was going on throughout the first game, throughout, Utah State. I think another thing, too, was the secondary, right? Who was going to be that? Who was going to be those two guys on the outside, right? And we still don't know that yet. Each person there is the prototypical Nick Saban corner, right? Huge, 6'1", at least over 195 pounds, 200 plus, long wingspan type guys. Guys that are very, very physical and excel in man coverage. But for the most part, it's just been a battle there. And at least from what I've not heard, and maybe Ty, you can try to correct me on this, we still haven't named the official top two guys. I still feel like it's going to be that battle for as far as co-starting with Terrian and Kyrie and Kool-Aid and then, of course, Eli Ricks, who a lot of Bama fans love and a lot of people project that he's going to be a first-round pick. So those are really just the two areas that I'm excited for, but at the same time, I'm nervous for. And especially going into this game against Texas, I think that going into this one, I wouldn't be surprised at all if the coaching staff really starts to kind of scheme around it, kind of address it in a way, just really try to see, does Bama, are they solid in those issues, right? Are they solid over there, right? Is that something that we can test out? That's something that we can exploit. So overall wise, it's something I was excited for before, and honestly, I still am, and in a way, a little nervous about that.
Absolutely. Homer, I'm going to pass you that same question for the Texas Longhorns.
So I was excited about all the weapons we acquired in the offseason. Billingsley, who will not play, Nair, who got hurt, and then Hall, who hopefully will play this game. But that was kind of the big thing. So I think it's Sanders right now is who I'm really excited for and who I want to see. But it's kind of shifted. I was very offensive focused during the offseason because of those weapons, but life happens. I'm more excited to see what the defense can do. It was ULM. We know that's not a grand opponent, but they were communicating a lot better. Even when they were messing up, I noticed like they would be flagging each other down, screaming, "I don't know the play," and they would get it correct. Last year, they would just not know the play. And so this is what I liked about the defense. They were flying around a lot more. When there were missed tackles, people were there. So it's kind of done a total 180 on me. I was super excited about the offense, but I'm excited to see what the defense can do, especially against an Alabama offense that's gonna be awesome. So I'm mostly looking for the defense. I want to see them communicate, fly around, the typical football cliches for a defense, but that is what I'm looking forward to.
Absolutely. No, you're 100% right on that. Gentlemen down at the bottom, I want to hear from y'all now because there's just so much intrigue. Nino, what were you most excited about in the offseason, and what are you most excited about now that the game is right on the horizon?
Hey, man, same thing with a homer, man. I was most excited about the skill positions as well, but, since most of those guys aren't playing right now, it is what it is. As of now, seeing Overshawn, just the way that they have used him and kind of moved him around the whole defense, it's been great. He's been blitzing well. He's been just all over the field, playing edge, playing linebacker, dropping back in coverage, the whole nine. So that's been very, very just, basically just good for the Texas defense. Things that also Barron Sorrell. Barron Sorrell was a great surprise here for the defense. He had, I think, 2 sacks last week, and that, basically tied for the most sacks of anybody from the team all of last season. So I think the kid stayed like in one game. So yeah, man, just seeing the defense fly around, that was perfect.
So, Ty, I want to piggyback off of the Barron Sorrell point that Nino just made, and
Absolutely.
I'll jump into the question as well. I think I challenged this defensive line last year in terms of where were you guys in terms of all these Keandre Coburn, Ojimo, guys that we feel like can play, but there was very, very little production. So to see that production and to Homer mentioned communication, all of those things, even something Jance mentioned earlier about what you guys are trying to figure out with your corners. I feel like Texas right now might be more locked into what their 2D looks like, even more so than Bama in some ways. And that may not necessarily be a positive or negative, because one of the things I think we'll see in this game is these coaches are trying to figure out, use games to figure out who they trust and what their rotations are going to be heading into conference play. That's significant for Texas. I know that you guys are trying to try to figure that out and use these games and whatnot to get a better grip on who do we trust down the stretch. The same thing with Texas with the defensive line. And so the other thing in terms of offseason, what I was excited to see, the adjustment with Steve Sarkisian and this staff in terms of halftime, when I jump on an opponent, when I'm behind, when somebody, counters. There's been a lot of talk about Sark against 3 deep safeties and him struggling against that or struggling to run the football. So our offensive line, right? Can we get a push? Can we get enough from them to allow Sark to get more into his menu? So I really am looking at, schematically what we're going to look to do, and a huge test against Bama.
Yeah, absolutely. And, now I kind of want to address this because, Jance, you took exactly what I was going to say as a Bama fan, right? That offensive line. So I'm going to go in a little bit different of a direction and pick out 2 players for y'all that I was very excited about, one in the offseason and one now. The one in the offseason, I think, has to be Jahmyr Gibbs, right? Especially when you look at the layers he adds into this Alabama offense. In my preview video today, whenever I was talking about the keys for Texas's offense to find success against Alabama, I did a whole bit breaking down Bijan, talking about, yes, he's a fantastic running back in a traditional fashion, but his ability out the backfield as a receiving threat, whether he gets the ball or not, it really doesn't matter. The fact that threat is so real, defenses are going to have to be cognizant of wherever he is, which can open up something on the back end. We kind of already saw that with Jahmyr Gibbs against Utah State. Not to say he's Bijan Robinson, just to say that same logic carries over about the receiving threat being able to suck the defense forward. That's something I was super keyed in on. But now Jaheim Otis is a freshman defensive lineman for the Crimson Tide who dropped over 40 pounds this offseason. And I don't know if y'all saw that clip. I sent it to Homer. He took out 4 offensive linemen for Utah State in one fell swoop. That is going to be a problem child, and I just can't wait to see how he continues to develop. Now, specifically looking into this game, I do want to turn some attention to an area for Texas that I am really intrigued on, a player for Texas even that has piqued my interest. Jatavian Sanders, the tight end for Texas, who when I watched him against ULM, he displays the athleticism, which I wasn't surprised, him being from Denton Ryan. I covered him when I was at Dave Campbell's Texas football as an intern. I got to watch him play. But how difficult he was for that college defense to bring down, because we really didn't get to see him in action last year, was telling. How confident are y'all as Texas fans in Jatavian Sanders and what he's going to bring to this offense? And Jance, how are you keyed in on how Alabama needs to slow down Jatavian Sanders so that he doesn't unlock more for the Texas offense?
Hey, folks, I'll go on this first, man.
Absolutely.
So having Sanders, man, what this does for us is it, honestly allows us to stretch the field. And that's something that we couldn't do at all last year. Cade Brewer, Jared Wiley, they were going 5 yards an hour, and that was pretty much it. Sanders has been able to go down the field, 25-yard catches twice in one game. Just being able to stretch the field, actually blocking pretty well, also. So what is that going to do? It's going to, stretch those safeties out, and BJ's going to have some more run to actually run. So, he's been a great mismatch problem just for that first game. We'll see what, what happens against Bama, but I love the way that he just basically stretches the field for us.
Absolutely.
I'm going to jump in. I'm going to jump in too real quick. He is an area of comfort for Quinn Ewers, point blank. Their chemistry is already there. Another thing I will mention about Jatavian Sanders that it's uncanny for a redshirt freshman, and maybe you guys are familiar with this personality-wise from Denton Ryan. He is one of the people on the team that's taken a position of leadership, but he's taken a position of leadership by example, and he's vocal when he needs to be. He's not, a rah-rah guy, but he's also the guy that's like, hey, this is how this needs to be done correctly. I'm only going to show you, and watch me do this. And then he validates that with his performance in his very first real live start in college. And he looked like a veteran last week. I mean, when our quarterback was struggling early in the game, it's 4th down. Who was the person that settled Quinn down? It was Jatavian. And so the physical prowess that Nino just mentioned with his blocking, that's why he was an elite talent and size-wise, and why we all thought he could be a generational defensive talent too. Like, that's just the freak athlete that he is. 54 yards last week after contact, with run after catch, I should say, not after run after catch. Like, those are some of the things he can do. So it's not even just stretching the field. We know he can do that. We know he can get vertical, but also the ability to catch a drag route underneath, break some tackles. He's going to be a tough guy to take down. So I'm excited to hear Jance's answer on how they're going to stop zero.
I have no clue. I'll be completely honest. Jatavian Sanders. Steve, we talked about this a lot. We struggle a little bit with athletic tight ends. I had to really go back and see, okay, what do we do against, some of the best athletic tight ends that we went up against last year, and what do we do, try to do to slow them down? And then I take a look at the games that really kind of gave us a little bit of trouble. The Florida game with Keon Zipper and Gamble, when those two guys, when Florida was running a lot of 12, and those two tight ends were giving us fits. Now, granted, again, we had a lot of miscommunication in the secondary. It was just, our secondary was not really on point. P. Golding had a lot of criticism that can fall in the same favor with A&M. Ole Miss a little bit, even though, again, Alabama pretty much dominated Ole Miss that game. They did have some success with their tight end as well. Pretty athletic one, not to mention. But man, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge, for the most part. Obviously, if we try to go to man a little bit, obviously it's either going to be with our linebacking core, maybe get some safety help, whether if it's DeMarco Helms or Jordan Battle, or it's with our stars with Brian Branch or Malachi Moore that can do it. Now, Malachi Moore is an interesting player because if you guys end up running 12, and if Malachi Moore is going to be in that position to where he can potentially guard or at least be at top of that zone with Jatavian Sanders in it, I think maybe Malachi Moore could be the best player for it. But I always kind of make this comparison with Moore. I mean, I compare him to Trayvon Diggs a little bit because he loves to gamble. He loves to gamble, and when it works, it's a turnover. But when it doesn't work, he bites. So for the most part, that's a little bit tricky, man. But Jatavian Sanders he's a monster. I mean, 6'5", 260 plus pounds, extremely athletic, and this is a guy that at Ryan they pretty much moved him all over the place. But that's a guy that understands how to play the receiving position, right? This is not like Drew Sanders, where even though Drew Sanders was a tight end himself at Ryan. For the most part, if you can split, you didn't really split him out wide a lot, or maybe primarily put him in the slot a little bit. Jatavian Sanders is just a different breed. He is the prototypical tight end that a lot of NFL teams would love to try to cover. So, for the most part, that's a challenge, man. That's why I talked about this a lot in the Texas spaces before, man. When you guys had Jalil, I'm like that matchup right there with Jalil and Jatavian scares the daylights out of me. Only because I know what Jalil's capabilities are. He's a guy that, for the most part, is tremendous when it comes to the intermediate routes. He is a terrific route runner. He understands how to separate from other defenders, and run after the catch is also a specialty. But with Jatavian, that's a guy that you can stretch the field with that kid easily. And so that's why when I watched the spring game, I'm like, okay, we could have a problem. But obviously, with Jalil being suspended, now it's going to be a little bit of a question mark there. I still feel like Jatavian could be a big factor in this game. Obviously, the connection between Quinn Ewers, obviously, I think they're being they're roommates, I believe. So obviously, he's that security blanket. He's that person that obviously you want to keep an eye on. But when you take a look at some of our players and some of the personal one-on-one matchups, if we can get into those with Jatavian Sanders, maybe. Because the more I'm trying to think about it, I'm like, I don't think there's anybody in our team personally that can guard him one-on-one. So I think if Steve Sarkisian could game plan and find those matchups, I think that's going to be a situation where Quinn Ewers is definitely going to try to go to and try to target a lot.
Yeah, Connor, what do you think?
I was going to say he has the best hands. Him and Juan Davis are the best hands on the team. So he's going to be consistent there. In the ULM game, whenever Quinn looked like he was going to scramble and then Jatavian kind of ran out to his side and he did that quick pitch to Sanders, that was showing their intelligence. So you're going to see a lot of 12. That's kind of our base personnel regardless of Bama. It's not a thing for Bama. That's just something we've been practicing a lot. So you're going to see a lot of 12. And your guys are just going to have to be disciplined because half the time he's going to come on split zone and he's coming for the block. But on that sixth time, he's breaking out for a route, and they're going to hit him. And so that'll be the biggest things for whoever's on him. However you guys want to match up is just they're going to trick you with him. He's going to block a lot of those times, but that one time he slips out, he's been able to get there. And Sark will put him on a post or a glance too. So it's not even all. They'll put him in line. He looks like he's going to block whatever end, and then he's just going to go straight vertical. And if you throw it in his area, he's going to be able to catch it. So you can have him covered. But he has that wide receiver athleticism where he can get up over you. And if Quinn's ball placement is where we see it a third of the time when you go, wow, Quinn. But if he does that consistently with ball placement with Sanders, he's going to be hard for anybody. I mean, they could be standing next to him. He can still grab it.
Exactly. Yeah, that you can't teach that size and athleticism, right? That's you either have it or you don't. If I'm looking, I'm hoping we can get some safety matchup on him, right? Especially like a Jordan Battle, someone – who I think is probably the best case scenario.
Because that's the best choice because it's not Helms. It's not Ryan Branch. It's not him. So
that's who I think Branch would have a decent time. But if you're telling me right now who I'd want to pick, it's Jordan Battle that would take that matchup, right? Because I worry about the other things Texas can run out there, not necessarily, especially when it comes to Steve Sarkisian. Right, because you have all the eye candy. We're talking about Jatavian Sanders, but then you still have Bijan Robinson on the same play. If he's out on the field, your linebackers are going to have to be paying attention to somebody, right? So then you have Xavier Worthy, which someone actually, Corey right here says, don't forget about Xavier Worthy. I think this is a great time to start talking about y'all's number one wide receiver who came off of a year last year where he put college football on notice, quite frankly, as to what he was capable of. When I was doing my preview video today, I had a whole bit on Xavier Worthy, and I really extended it to the Texas wide receiver core as a whole. And as much as I know and respect Xavier Worthy's ability to take the top off of defense, because it's there, I'm more interested in what Texas is going to do in the short to intermediate game, because if I was a betting man, I would bet Steve Sarkisian's not too interested in testing the deep ball sooner in the game because of the pass rush presence Alabama fields, until he can get that short to intermediate game worked out, and Alabama's defense kind of has to account for all areas of the game. What are we thinking when it comes to Alabama's secondary against the Texas wide receiver room? Because they've got some playmakers there, and more specifically with Xavier Worthy. Jance, I'm going to start with you.
Well, obviously, Xavier Worthy is one of the most explosive receivers in all of college football. I mean, I talked about it a lot with them last year. I mean, Kieran, he made a pretty funny compilation about it, but that kid is in my opinion, I think that kid's going to be a first round pick sooner rather than later. But for the most part, regarding to cut a little bit with our secondary a little bit, obviously we have some guys that I think could potentially, I don't think we have a guy that I'm gonna be completely honest. I don't think we have a person on our team that can guard him one-on-one. I do believe we have some people though on our team that can slow him down. And that's Bama loves, Ty, this, we love to play a lot of press. We like to jam a lot with our receivers. We love to be a little bit more physical, especially on the line. Even when we back away, we do have some safety help with Battle coming across. Obviously, he can cover sideline to sideline. It's definitely probably the best field safety, definitely when it comes to our football squadron. But it's going to be an interesting matchup to see what will happen there. Because obviously Eli Ricks, is he really in form? That's kind of the question there, right? What about Terrion Arnold, right? Terrion Arnold is a redshirt freshman. Didn't do really much of a bad job, but there's still some questions about his game. Kool-Aid McKinstry, for the most part, even though if you really want to just take it all, I mean, he's technically the most experienced corner, at least right now on the roster. But even for Kool-Aid, he's still not at that level yet, at least from what I saw in the Utah State game. And that's why it's still a question mark. That's why, in a way, as much as it was refreshing for us to have that tune-up game, because we get to see a lot of our depth pieces play. That's something that we didn't do last year because we were in so many close tight ball games. At the same time, I was like, oh my God, I didn't really want it to happen because our defensive line was pretty much just absolutely eating up the offensive line away. So our secondary couldn't get tested, right? The only things that we can take away from it is that we kind of got beat a little bit on the inside slants. So that's probably the only thing that we could worry about. And ironically, the one person that was getting beat on these inside slants was Eli Ricks. But for the most part, that's going to be a little bit of a question mark because again, what's the scheme? What can we do to try to slow down an Xavier Worthy, right? Just in case if Sark does go out there and takes those deep shots, only because we all know Quinn Ewers has one of the best arms in college football.
Cannon.
Yeah, he that's a 5-star talent right there. Yeah. So obviously Nick Saban, he knows it. He's going to respect it. And that's something that I'm really, really looking forward to. But again, it's just one of those situations where as talented as our secondary pool is, especially in those outside corners, it still is up in the air because we really don't know. And the only thing we can really bank off of is the film from what we saw last year, a little bit of the spring game, and obviously that Utah State game, which obviously they didn't get tested.
Yeah, very good point. Homer, what are you thinking?
So I like pressing Worthy, right? Because he's a smaller guy. So that's a good option. You don't want to play him off. He'll be able to find the space. It's mostly your safety help that's going to limit Worthy. Because quarterbacks, too, are just taught there's two bodies near him. Don't throw it anyways. Go to your next read. So it's not even like you really have to be clamping him. They'll just go to their next read naturally. And ULM did that a lot. They rolled the safety over Worthy a lot. Mm-hmm. Now, there were 2 or 3 times where Worthy could have had the ball and Quinn missed it. But it's really going to be about wide receiver, too. And that's why Nair was going to be such a big piece, right? Because if you take away Worthy, you still have the threat at number 2. But I'm worried about Battle helping out. I'm worried about him baiting Quinn. But I think you take away Worthy, press him off the line. He's still going to get his moves, and he's still going to make his plays. But it's mostly just schematically putting a safety over him so the quarterback is trained already to go to read number 2. So I'm interested to see. And last year, Worthy caught people by surprise. He broke out in the OU game. He's catching no one by surprise this year.
Very true.
They're game planning for Worthy. And so I'm really interested to see how he performs this year when the heat's on him. And then also how can Whittington, if he's number 2, and if we go into 11, when Casey Kane and Whittington, how can they take pressure off of him? Because that's going to be the key to unlocking Worthy this year because everybody knows what he's capable of.
We need Jordan Whittington to have the same type of impact that he had before he got injured against OU last year, where he was consistent and he did develop a chemistry, quite frankly, with both Hudson Card and Casey Thompson. He was actually the old security blanket. To Homer's point about wide receiver 2, absolutely, that's the big concern. And here's the other thing too. You guys are talking about playing press man coverage. Let's say we're talking about playing cover 1 and Battle is kind of helping and cheating on Worthy.
Yeah,
that can play into Alabama's hand as well. If they know and Pete Golding and Saban understand that the quarterback's progression is going to go right to Sanders or Whittington, then I'm gonna bluff. And Battle's going to go and have the ability to freelance or branch, one of the two. That will be kind of like a box and one concept that you see sometimes in the NFL, where a guy will drop off all of a sudden after he's carried 5 times or 6 times. And that's where you can have a turnover. And they talk about in the NFL where you set a trap. You set a trap on somebody. That's a fear of mine. I'm just being very candid with everybody here, because I can see Saban doing that, because they're not going away from playing press man. That's a staple of what they do. It's one of the reasons why I like watching Nick Saban defense and how aggressive he empowers his corners to be. This better not be the wake-up call game for Eli Ricks. That brother can stay asleep, as far as I'm concerned.
Let him stay night.
Yeah, he can stay night because he has big-ass talent. It's just he's been inconsistent. Homer highlighted in his video earlier this week the injuries that Ricks has faced. And that's probably affected his consistency as a football player right now. He can stay asleep.
Yeah, I still don't think he's recovered from his torn left shoulder labrum. I don't think he's
really.
He looked tentative in Utah State. He just didn't look right.
He looked the same.
I saw him out there.
Yeah, I don't think he's fully recovered, because normally, like, he is, like, when he jams, like, you go back and look at his LSU film compared to what they kind of use the small sample size with Alabama, he was way more physical as far as jamming, getting his hands on, as far as being a lot more physical. Exactly. It seemed like in the Utah State game, it was just like it was a little timid to him.
Yeah, he was timid. Yeah.
Hey, go ahead. I just want to make one quick point before you go, Nino. The most underrated thing, people listening out here, one of the most underrated things with cornerback play in particular is your upper body strength. That matters, especially if you want to press. And if you have a shoulder issue and all this type of stuff, and now you're playing almost essentially you just only can really play bail technique, that really, really hurts you as a player. And so, I talk about this, Homer and I talk about this all the time with our guys. Hey, when we get hands on man and reroute, hey, let's take away that 4 yards to the line of scrimmage, so we make those 9 route throws with a lot more difficult opportunity to get interception. So just something to keep in mind when you have an injured player and what that means in terms of what Jance was just describing. I'm sorry, Nino. I just want to go.
Oh yeah,
wanted to make that
man.
point.
It's all good. Yeah, Ty. So you know me, I do a lot of stats, right? So I was looking at the game, and Sark likes to take deep shots pretty early, and so he took 6 deep shots on first downs in that first game, and that's pretty much to keep the defenses honest. So if you got somebody who is not fully healthy out there, I can see him definitely using Worthy, just trying to test it deep. Hey, if he gets one, he gets one. If he doesn't, he doesn't. It still keeps everybody honest, right? So, I can definitely see him doing that. That's by far the most times he went deep on one single down pretty much throughout the whole game, right? So 6 times deep just on first down alone. If he can get one pass connected out of those 6 to Worthy, it definitely opens up the whole, just basically route tree for everybody on the offense.
Yeah, and it's interesting, the cornerback position. If I'm putting a corner on Worthy, it's going to be Kool-Aid, right? Because from an athletic standpoint, Kool-Aid has got so much athleticism. I mean, if you really check back at his high school film, I think a lot of people wouldn't have been surprised if he transitioned to wide receiver. I mean, he was a legit threat in high school at wide receiver, big playability, and he's got really good ball skills. So that's who I would put out there. But I love the points y'all made, because it's something I was talking about earlier is I think Alabama's going to look to bait Quinn Ewers. And if we go to the ULM game, I understand it was the first 2 passes, but I think that perfectly highlights one of the things Nick Saban's going to look to do. The first 2 passes Quinn threw in that ULM game One of them was a near interception, and the other one was an interception because of the same concepts I think Nick Saban and them are going to try and replicate. Whenever you're looking at this, though, I think from a secondary standpoint and from a front standpoint, what are you most concerned about, right, when it comes to the Alabama defense? And I think this is probably a question that deserves no answer. We all know where this is going, but I do want to hear it, right? It feels good to hear. I want to see the fear in your eyes. I want to see the hope leave your faces as you tell me how you fear Will Anderson and Dallas Turner. So, what do you fear most that you're going to have to stop? And Jance, what do you fear most that Alabama is going to have to stop from an offensive standpoint on the defensive side?
Yeah. Definitely. Dallas Turner, Will Anderson. Yes. Scary. Scary to say the least. One thing that Sark did do in the last game that I think he's going to do this game as well. Our basically, our swing tackle, Carrick, he lined up at tight end, a lot last game. And I think that Sark's going to use that this game, just to have him as that second tight end to basically either be that extra blocker, on an Anderson, extra blocker on a Turner, just to make sure that Quinn has adequate time to get the ball out if we are going deep, but also to make sure that we have somebody big enough to handle Anderson. I'm not going to say, he can get him one-on-one, but if he can get on his outside and have like a Banks on his inside, we got two guys who are 320 plus pounds who can kind of neutralize him a little bit. And that way that can open up all the running lanes here for Bijan as well. But yeah, I think Sark's going to use a lot of 12 personnel with Carrick used as a secondary tight end for, I would say, at least 30% of the time on those plays.
You want to get the ball out quick, man. I mean, that's just really what it is. Like, early down success is the way Texas wins because you cannot get into third and long against you guys. So there's the schematic things like 12, but really get the ball out quick. It's honestly like the Alabama offense. You all get it out quick too, man. And so it's just like if we can get it out quick, he can stop the run. There's really – Will Anderson is going to make his plays. In my video, I did find if he goes from the right, he's half as effective, which is really interesting. So there's some schematic, like formationally things you could potentially do to weaken him a little bit. But then you still have Turner coming in flying. And then if you guys get Braswell in that package, it's just going to be a problem. And so we're going to have to devote a crazy amount of resources. But when you do that with Anderson, you're going to open up Turner. Really the way to neutralize this, chip with backs, get tight ends, and pass quickly. Utah State did some of that stuff with y'all as well. And then after we go, I want to hear from y'all when y'all have seen Anderson actually get weakened or what you've actually seen be effective against Anderson.
Before Jance goes, because I want to hear the answer to that question too. The only thing I'll add to that, because I see somebody here mentioning that, Anderson had no sacks last week. I don't think Bama had a sack last week, right?
Yeah, I was actually going to make a comment about this as well.
Yeah. So this is something that we talked about, Jance, earlier in the week.
Mm-hmm.
That's still a negative. You know why? Because Utah State was trying to throw the ball so quick that they got out of what they normally do, and they started misreading stuff.
Exactly.
4th and 1, you have a slant where the guy wins on the inside, but the quarterback is in his mind trying to get it out so fast because they're thinking about Dallas Turner, they're thinking about Chris Braswell, they're thinking about Will Anderson, that now he throws the ball out of bounds on 4th down. So, sacks are important. I'm not, but pressure matters. How you're dictating play calling matters or play design. Mm-hmm. If you're taking away half the menu just because they're out there, then they're already doing their job.
It's a mental sack.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so I'll kick it to Jance.
Yeah, before Jance goes, I was even going to add on to that, Stephen, and say Matt's not wrong. He had 0 sacks last week, but Tom Brady also threw 0 touchdown passes last week. That doesn't diminish how great he is. Like, I don't really know what we're doing here with that.
Yeah, you're like that's the top pick of the draft next year. This dude is, he's
Will Anderson's so overrated, guys.
I don't know where we're going with that.
What are you talking about, Homer?
No, he's he's awesome, man.
That dude's awesome, dude.
Yeah, I'm about to say, man, he only played like 20 snaps, but it is what it is. In a way, that's the one thing I'm honestly fearful of is and that is if Texas, if those plays start to kind of formulate, and if Quinn Ewers starts to find a rhythm, if he gets comfortable to a point, to a point where maybe he has a little bit more trust in his offensive line, maybe he has more trust in the play design, and they start to really kind of execute not just on the intermediate routes, on the intermediate routes, but they start to go beyond the 15 marker as far as their passes. Our defense starts to kind of, most notably our secondary starts to kind of malfunction a little bit because it is a very complex defense, man. I mean, it requires a lot of communication. We like to kind of pass. True. We like to kind of pass out a little bit here. I mean, again, we got our own signals. We got like cone, dog, mad. I mean, it's
requires high football IQ.
Yeah. I mean, it requires a lot of communication with Jordan Battle. That's the signal caller of the defense. He has to try to get that right. And that was what we struggled last year, right? Last year is what we struggled with, right? For the most part. I mean, our defensive line was pretty much better than the majority of the teams in the country in the early part of the season. But the problem is that once we let these teams become a little bit more comfortable and they found ways to pick apart the secondary, and we just, no matter what adjustment we tried to make, there was always something off, right? It wasn't really simple, and that's where, and Ty can attest to this, we tried to really, how many videos did we make saying that please just simplify the defense, just let the front four just do their work and just let the secondary play. You don't have to make all these weird design play calls. I mean, it's just, so that's something that I'm honestly fearful is just kind of beating ourselves a little bit more, letting Texas getting into a rhythm to a point where Quinn Ewers feels comfortable, because if he gets comfortable and he starts to really figure out how to, which areas to pick apart, whether if it's the Jatavian Sanders matchups, with Malachi Moore lined up on him, or Brian Branch rotates at star and he's lined up on him, he knows that that's a matchup, quick pass, whether it's an out route or whatever it's sort of intermediate route or even beyond that, I can hit that guy. Whether if it's Xavier Worthy, he's matched up against Terry and Arnold, he sees a matchup that he likes. He knows, and maybe it's bait, maybe it's not bait, but he sees that matchup. He knows Xavier Worthy can beat that matchup. He knows what sort of coverage that they're playing in, he can hit that, right? So I don't want Texas to get into any sort of rhythm, right? For the most part, I'd rather for them just to try to go with the quick passes, do those swing routes to Bijan Robinson. That's playing in Alabama's strength. That's what they love to do, right? I mean, you look at the Utah State game, perfect example. Kyrie, we're to a point where they try to hit a screen. Kyrie Jackson absolutely blasts the receiver up and hits the dude in the backfield to make the play. That's what Alabama does. That's why Nick Saban loves those 6'1", 200-pound corners, because they're kind of extra safe, even though they're not safeties, they're kind of extra safeties, right? That's why Brian Branch is he's more considered known to be more of a run stopping type of safety more than he is more of your prototypical zone, your prototypical playmaking zone coverage type of safety. That's Malachi Moore's job, even though Malachi Moore, he can be that extra blitzer. But Brian Branch has that Xavier McKinney role. And honestly, that's where I want us to be. I want us to be in a comfortable spot. I want Texas to be as comfortable as possible. I want Quinn Ewers to be on his toes. However, if we go into this game and we try to do too much to a point where the secondary has some miscommunication, and Texas and Steve Sarkisian, because I call Sark, he's a shark. Sark, when he smells blood in the water, he's going to go after it. And when he smells a weakness, he's attacking it. And he's not going to stop until you figure out a way to stop it. That's how Jimbo Fisher beat us. That's how Dan Mullen, in a way, was able to have the success they had when they almost won that game against us, back in week 3. So it's going to be a very interesting matchup. But I'm just hoping that our secondary can just get it right. The communication is there. And if we simply just execute on our plays, we'll be fine.
Yeah. Hey, Jance. So, yeah, I think this might be one of the pluses for Texas in this game is that we are playing Alabama so early. And like you said, Jance, you guys' defense is very complicated, right? I mean, it's high football IQ. I don't know if that defense is going to be clicking on all 8 cylinders here in this second game, just like against Florida last year, right? Florida got about 410 yards on you guys. That was a very close game, right? So I think that might be one of the saving graces for Texas to try to keep this game close. Also, with Quinn throwing that pick early in the game, I think Quinn has so much he has just so much talent. He believes in his arm that much. I think him throwing that pick in that game early was like, this ain't high school no more. You can't thread that ball like that no more. So I think that might have been an absolute positive for him, because hey, just get it out the way, get that first pick out the way. I would hate for that first pick to come against Bama and here's Battle running the ball back for a touchdown, right? So yeah, he got it out the way. He comes back, he regroups, right? And then, after that, he drives down 3 or 4 straight drives, just straight for a touchdown. So yeah, I think that was a plus just to get that INT out the way as soon as possible. Understand, yes, I trust my arm, but hey, these guys are athletes also, right? And also Bama, this being their second game of the season for that complicated defense, Texas might have just a small, just chance to kind of take advantage of that.
And that's my worry. That's honestly my worry is the fact that in that Utah State game we didn't run a lot of plays with our secondary. I mean, it was really, really simplified. Now maybe we'll do that against Texas, but the fact of the matter is that we're going against better athletes, we're going against better football players, and this is going to be a game, in my opinion, where for the first game this is going to be tested against a really good skill position group with a quarterback that is, as far as arm talent goes, is probably better than pretty much any quarterback we played against last year. So that's the one worry going into this game that I have.
So can I jump in here real quick, because Jance, you brought up basically a question I wanted to ask you and Ty in terms of the familiarity with Steve Sarkisian, right? And the other guy, Jeff Banks, Kyle Flood, all that matters, right? There's tactical things, there's corporate knowledge that people know. And I thought one of the interesting quotes this week from Nick Saban was, "We know them too." He said that, and that kind of resonated with me because you guys had so much success with Steve Sarkisian. You watch Texas, you see the plays, you can plug in. You're like, okay, that was Devontae's play. Oh, that was Jalen's play. Oh, that was Billingsley's play. You can see it. I mean, the offense is beautiful, but it is not like anything crazy. It's still the same concepts. So I'm really curious to see the back and forth there, and if that familiarity can help Texas, because y'all are amazing non-conference regular season. Alabama's been incredible. I think it's Louisiana Monroe. Somebody, I think either that or Michigan State. Florida State.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, Monroe and Florida State were the last 2 games we lost to.
So that was 15 years ago?
Yep. It was Nick Saban's first year, right? Nick Saban's first year. Yeah.
So that was so roughly
100 years ago, man.
That was the last time y'all took an L non-con. Now this is a true road game non-con, so we got to factor that in too.
We haven't had that since Penn State,
which was 2011. So it's over a decade since you had a true opponent like this non-con. But when we look back at what you guys struggled with last year on the road, Auburn, right? Or even I know LSU wasn't on the road, but at home, these are teams that weren't afraid of Bama. They didn't have that Bama fear. They didn't do what Utah State did on 4th and 1, where it's like, hey, I just need to execute the slant. I don't need to get crazy and get the ball out that quick, right? There's a fear factor that plays in, I think, psychologically with teams that play out of Alabama non-con. I need Steve Sarkisian, Kyle Flood, Jeff Banks to eliminate that. I need them to make this feel like a divisional game. I need them to make this feel like we are Auburn, nothing to lose. I feel like one of the things that scares Alabama fans, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, is when y'all are like 11-0 or 11-1 or whatever, or 10-1, and you're playing a 6-5 Auburn team with none to lose. And they have no fear.
In Jordan, not anywhere but Jordan Hare.
It doesn't matter if they have 1 win, dude. You're playing in Jordan Hare. No.
They don't care.
I don't know what they did to that field, but it needs to be investigated. It's a genuine travesty in this nation that nobody knows what's going on there. The Brian Harsin drama is minuscule compared to the drama I would cause at Jordan Hare Field. I swear to God, that place right there. I digress, Stephen, please. I'm going to get PTSD talking about Jordan Hare, the kick 6, just flashbacks. And
I watched that game live, man, and I remember just being like, what?
You and me both.
Yeah. Crazy game.
Interesting fact, anytime Bama loses at Jordan Hare, something terrible happens. Just it's set to be. That's just Jordan Hare. Anyways, I apologize. Go ahead, Steve.
No, it's just the familiarity factor. They have to incorporate that into the kids, our kids, that is. Hey, we're going to come over here and compete. LSU wasn't good last year, but they had no problem rolling into Tuscaloosa and competing. That's what we're looking. They were able to answer the bell and answer the test until Alabama proved they were the better team that night and won the game, right? And so these games that we see, you know, I know Saban's record, 25-2 against former assistants, and it's dope, but 2 of those losses came last season. And so, you know, you look at 1 and 2 or whatever it was against his, you know, between Kirby and Jimbo. And, you know, Homer and I have talked about this too. Even if you look at the Texas A&M game, they had an expectation not just to compete, but to win. They felt like they belonged on the field with Bama. Exactly. And so I can't have guys on our side, you know, early at 11 a.m. tomorrow, you know, doing stuff that is just weird or uncharacteristic. And you see them playing out of fear. I talk about this all the time on my channel in terms of the spectrum of coaching: scared, conservative, aggressive, reckless. I need y'all to be in that conservative, aggressive area, but you can't go to scared, because that's what Utah State was. And scared money, Nick Saban and them eat that up, right? They eat up scared money. But you also can't get stupid, right? And start doing onside kicks and reverse, you know, double passes and all that type of stuff. So we got to keep in the middle there and be confident in executing our game plan. Those are my 2 cents.
You guys just need to be yourselves, honestly. I mean, that's how A&M. I mean, like I said, A&M, they ran some motion probably more times than anyone else, but I mean, they didn't really do anything that crazy. I mean, they simply just did what they needed to do. I mean, they didn't try to be too cute. They didn't need to, but they didn't need to, like you said, they didn't try to be too stupid. They just executed. Yeah. Florida in the first half against us, that's what they try to do. They try to be too cute. They tried to do things with Emory Jones. He's probably never really done that much before, or really they practiced on it, but just
they ran a lot of ridiculous plays in the first half of that game.
That's Dan Mullen. Yeah. Like, Dan Mullen is the most infuriating mind in college football.
It's like, bro, that is not your offense.
It's like, chill.
And then the second half, what happened? They opened up the run game. Okay, you know what? Give it to Dameon Pierce. Give it to this running back here, and we're gonna just run with Emory Jones. Let's see if we can try to open up the passing attack a little bit. And they executed it into perfection in that second half against us. I mean, they had over 300 yards rushing in that game against us. Exactly. So it's just simple, man. You guys just need to be yourselves and just simply go out there and just execute. I mean, for the most part, don't be discouraged. If you guys are making mistakes, just go out there and execute. Do your best, honestly. But you got, like you said, you cannot be too stupid. You can't be scared. You can't be conservative, because that's when you're falling into Alabama's hands. That's why the famous saying, and Ty can attest to this, when Alabama's walking out, the game's already over. Because when players look at them, that's when they you can just tell the game's over. They're going to do something stupid on the opposite side of the ball by simply just looking at Alabama's players.
Yeah, and whenever we go back to that A&M game, I don't know how much y'all have watched it, but the missed assignments on the offensive line to me was the biggest difference in the A&M game a year ago. That offensive line would straight up have 3 people turn left and then everybody just go right where they came from. And it was so obvious one of you messed up. Whether that's fixed with a new offensive line coach or not, I'm not 100% sure. It's way too early to tell one way or another because of so many new faces on the offensive line. That's why I don't know quite how to feel yet about the Utah State game. It wasn't where I wanted it to be, but Jan's highlighted it earlier. Cohen's not in there yet. We still have so much news, so it's going to be interesting. But I want to take it back to something y'all asked me a while ago, and that was how, whenever someone has been able to limit Will, how did they do it? Honestly, the one game I saw him the most effectively limited last season, he still had just an incredible outing, and that was against A&M. He may not have notched a sack, but if you look at what he was able to do in tackles for loss, pressure, he was still there. And I don't know if y'all remember, Jance, please correct me if I'm wrong, the week before, he'd taken that hit to the knee. And there was a lot of concern as to whether he would even play that game or not, because his knee was wrapped up in a huge brace. I don't know if y'all remember it, but he took a dirty hit to the knee the week before A&M, and he didn't play the rest of the game where he got hit. Wow. It was concerning. So I'm not saying there's not a way to limit him, but I am saying the one time I've seen him limited, someone took a dirty shot on his knee the week before, and we didn't know if he'd be able to play. I'm not sure that gives y'all comfort. It gives me a little bit of comfort, but hey, that's
what I'm saying. Everybody already knows. He knows he's going to get doubled. He knows. Y'all have seen all this, and Anderson's seen all this. So it's like you can do the tight end thing. You can do all that. Well, Anderson's just an awesome player.
Yeah,
player.
he's gonna rise. He's a 5-star kid, right? 5-star kids, they ball out. It just is what it is, right? And they always ball out when they play for Alabama because they're next to a bunch of other 5-star kids, so they can roam free. So he's gonna be just fine, like Homer said.
It's the same thing about like the Georgia team last year, though, too, right? Like you can only cheat so much on Will because you
Open up
have
somebody
all
else.
of these people next to him, and you have Dallas Turner on the other side. So you can only
Exactly.
allocate so much before you just give away one-on-ones to everybody else. So I mean, it's a battle where you just have to, whether it's Christian Jones, Kelvin Banks, guys that are in there, are tight ends, man up, do the best you can, bro.
You gotta trust him. You gotta trust him. Yeah.
Oh, you must have came in late because I was saying what limited Will Anderson. I straight up said the bad offensive line play caused the loss. So, yeah, you must have came in late. That offensive
It's
line.
Ohio State fan. Leave him alone.
Yeah, they got
it.
they're still remembering the time Devontae Smith went for 5,000 yards. He's somewhere still in that stadium running around, and Ryan Day's trying to figure out what happened.
He's still running a lap.
It happens to the best of them. I don't know.
Gassers right now.
Hey, you getting cooked right now, Ohio?
Yeah,
You getting cooked.
I don't know. It happens to the best of us, but it is what it is. It is what it is. One thing I am interested in, though, is you can double team Will. What does that mean for the guy on the other side, Dallas Turner? Because this isn't a situation where you have just one freakish pass rusher standing there. You have them on both sides of the aisle, and they're ready to go. So whenever I look at this, the defensive front for Alabama is where I'm going to be keyed in on overall. And we've talked this whole time. We really have addressed Will. We haven't addressed the entirety of this defensive line versus the offensive line for Texas. Where are we sitting on that? Where do you feel Texas's offensive line has improved? Where are you concerned with Texas's offensive line and everything in between?
Ooh. All right. Improvements. Left tackle. I think we understand who our, left tackle for now and the future is, and that's Kelvin Banks Jr. However, he's still a freshman, right? I mean, he's still a freshman that didn't come in until the summertime. And so, it's kind of scary that he is our best left tackle, and he's only been on campus for probably 6 to 8 weeks, right? At the right tackle position, moving Christian Jones over to right tackle, he seems a lot more comfortable there, so he actually played pretty well, but he was kind of sketchy last year at the left tackle. I like the way that the tackles are playing. I'm still a little bit hesitant on the center position. I like Hayden Connor as well, but Cole Hudson, he is a true freshman as well, and he's at the right guard position, but just having a true freshman there, man, it's always scary having somebody, who, basically should have just been finishing prom about 4 months ago, starting against Alabama here in week 2. All right. So Kelvin Banks and Cole Hudson, I think Kelvin Banks he should do fine. He's going to have the, just a true, like freshman mistake. Same thing with Cole Hudson, but him and Christian Jones, I think, have looked really good so far just in that first game. I'm still just a little bit worried here, basically just at the center position.
No.
I'm worried about every position on the offensive line right now. I need to see him gel. They didn't grade out very well. They played more cohesive. It looked better early on in ULM, but it's such a small sample size, especially going after last year. And the guys that did get replaced got replaced by true freshmen. So we saw this with Arkansas last year when we came in, and it was eye-opening. So that's what I want to see is what can they do against Alabama's front. And you got to deal with the rushers, and you got Young, Dale, and then if Otis is who I don't want to see at all.
He's a monster
as well. So we're just gonna have to see, man. I have no confidence yet until it's earned by the offensive line.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of where I am. Right now, I like the matchups presented for Alabama, right? Just because from what I know, I think there's a lot of favorable matchups. My biggest thing, though, is interior. Alabama had a lot of production from the interior last offseason that they do have to try and replicate this season. They don't have that same guy there anymore. So Otis, Dale, these guys are going to have a big game. Boygby had a really nice game week 1. Byron Young had some moments. So I think luckily for Alabama, you're looking at a situation where you have the ability to rotate in a lot of guys, keep people fresh, and hopefully wear down Texas's front. Jance, what are you looking for?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think you just kind of said what I want to look for is that defensive line, especially in that interior. Justin Agbobi had a very, very productive day. He was extremely physical. I mean, that guy was before Jaheim was in the game, and before he's taking out 4 people. I mean, Justin Agbobi was constantly taking on those double teams, and he was handling his own. He was handling his own there. He was getting a lot of productions in the backfield, caused a lot of disruption. So again, when people will implement that Will Anderson had 0 sacks, he didn't really need to do anything special. I mean, he really didn't need to do anything special because, for the most part, even though you can stunt with Will on the inside and he can absolutely just be a monster in the run game if they needed to. Again, that A&M game, even though he had 0 sacks, I mean, if he was not playing in that game, Spiller could have ran for 150. Just because of the impact that Will had in that game of limiting the play. And I think Zay had like 50 or 40 yards rushing in that game. But no, I mean, the fact that was one really good positive sign that I was able to see was that Will Anderson didn't really need to do that much. And other guys that we've been talking about who can be that next Christian Barmore, Deron Payne, Fedarian Mathis for us last year, as far as not just being that prototypical disruptor or that run stopper, but who can potentially be that pass rushing interior defensive lineman. We've always had those, at least one. And maybe that could be a bogey. Byron Young has always constantly showed flashes over the last, really throughout his entire career, but it seemed like he still hasn't really put it all together yet. Who knows? Maybe it can be the Texas that can do that. But so what if it's a Bobby, Jaheim Otis, maybe DJ Dale? Nah, not really. I mean, DJ Dale's solid, but I don't think he's that guy. But from what I was able to see, especially going into this game with this defensive line, if they can keep that up and really in a way, limit the responsibility that Will Anderson really needs to do as far as using him, constantly using him on those inside stunts, rushing him on the inside, and then he has to kind of be productive and use him on the outside, and then he has to drop back into coverage. If they can, if we can kind of limit that and just have Will Anderson, take care of one responsibility, I think that's going to be really, really beneficial for us. But I would say besides that, it is definitely the linebacking play versus Texas running back play. I think that's going to be fun to watch. Jalen Moody, him kind of being not really a sideline to sideline guy, but definitely is a gap filler. He is that old school bruising type of linebacker that he's not going to play. Again, he's not going to be phenomenal in coverage. He's not going to be the fastest guy in the world, but he's going to lay a hat on somebody. And he is going to go out there and he's not going to be fearful as far as filling in those gaps and really helping our defensive line and some of our other players really fill in there and try to put a lot more hats on Bijan Robinson. Henry T is that sideline to sideline linebacker. And last year we had him and Christian Harris. But the problem was last year was that none of the linebackers, especially in the first 7-8 games, they did not want to be those gap fillers, right? They tried to run around guards. They tried to they try to do whatever it took, but besides actually trying to fill in their response, do their job, execute, and really fill in those gaps, plug in those holes so that we can, a 3 to 4 yard gain doesn't open up, doesn't turn into a 20, 30 something yard gain. That was our biggest issue last year. Now we have that guy with Jalen Moody, and now you pile that on with that defensive line. You have another extra player in Henry T that could be that sideline to sideline player. And that's where the Brian Branches, the DeMarco Hellums, the Jordan Battles come into the world. Those extra players that can definitely play in the box and be those extra outliers, just in case if guys like Bijan Robinson, Roshan, or Keelan, we all know those are pretty productive players, especially them being those extra security blankets for Quinn Ewers. That's where those players can come into play. So honestly, I'm stoked. I'm excited for it, but definitely the defensive line and linebacking player are the two things I'm really excited to see how we can fare well against this Texas offensive line.
I have just 2 quick points I want to make to what Jan said. Number one, you brought it up about Will Anderson playing last year against A&M and what he did to at least mitigate the issue with Spiller. If I see one more person talking about we need to run directly at Will Anderson, I'm going to lose it.
Oh, but he's only 243, Steven. Didn't you? There's a whole deal on Twitter.
Yeah, guys, watch the tape. I mean, I think we get fixated on the pass rushing element of especially edge guys. I get it; it's the sexy part of what they do. He is just as good
in the run
against the run.
Yep.
Period. I don't care about his weight. It's more the leverage he plays with, his technique, his explosiveness. He is outstanding against the run. That is not the way, my brothers and sisters. That is not the way. Okay. Now, I'm not saying you avoid people. Okay. Let me be also very clear. All right. But we got to play football and we need to be smart about it. But to say, hey, I'm just going to run at this guy like it's some situational pass rusher that is only there to, go after the quarterback and we're just going to run at him, make him tired. That's exactly what plays into Alabama's hands. So that's number one. The other point I want to make, you guys are going to have more pass rushing opportunities if we are being who we are and we're taking our shots off play action, even out of 12 personnel. Those are longer developing plays. That's not the quick stuff out of veer and shoot that Utah State was doing, where they're firing the ball out right away, right? So if and you guys know exactly what those plays are. Even some of the action we get out of orbit motion, and even some of those things can be longer developing, and so you can have more opportunities to get after the quarterback. The other thing too, with just the rotation with the defensive line and what you guys are trying to figure out with your rotation. Because I like all those guys on the interior, especially the younger guys that y'all have. The weather, it's going to be really hot. So you're going to be rotating more people than probably usual to keep people fresh.
It's hot as hell in Tuscaloosa.
It's hot in Alabama too, Steve.
It is hot in Alabama. However,
it's hot.
Hey, LSU said the same thing back in 2019.
That's a good point.
Until it became a big issue.
Till we cut their AC out.
AC was out.
I will say it's a lot drier in Texas.
We turned the AC out. Come on now.
Yeah, it's a lot drier. You don't get that dry.
Y'all aren't gonna be ready for that. That's what we're gonna
Take
catch
this.
y'all.
And I'm not saying that you guys aren't going to be prepared for the heat or anything. That's not my point. My point is one of the things that, even Louisiana Lafayette last year, when we played them in that where it was hot as hell out there, Billy Napier just naturally rotated more guys just to keep people fresh. Whether it was, even if he was at home, he would have done the same thing. So all I'm saying is that actually could be an advantage for you guys, because some of those younger guys that may not play under cooler temps may have more opportunity to get out there and get reps and fresher bodies. We saw this with the Buffalo Bills last night playing LA. You're a Bills fan. Y'all's rotation at defensive line was crazy, Jance, last night, but y'all were rotating more because the field was really, really hot last night in LA. And so Leslie Frazier is like, I'm going to take out Jordan Phillips. I'm going to, play around with this, and this. And next thing you know, the Rams offensive line was totally overwhelmed with fresh bodies. So I'm not meaning that as a negative to say that you guys can't handle the heat or anything like that. I think Texas is also going to have to rotate more guys on the defensive line as well. I think that evens out. It's just that's where depth comes into play. Who has more bodies? And so I think that is advantage Alabama.
Yeah. I'm super interested in that. In Ohio, I was messing with you earlier. I'm glad you're in here. But someone asked the question, I think it was D, how did Bama get beat by Georgia in the championship game? Answer is very simple. They made plays when the plays needed to be made, and Alabama failed to make them. That Georgia defense was all-time great. Georgia made the plays when they needed to be made, and Alabama didn't. Also,
Todd, let's just be honest. Alabama was missing their top two wide receivers in that game.
Well, that too.
That would have made a hell of a difference.
But here's the thing, I hear you. You're not wrong. But here's the only reason why I can't, with full comfort, say that. Because when the opportunity presented itself and those two guys were out, we still had chances to win that game, and we didn't.
Yeah, but I don't think you had the experienced guys to go out there and make those plays.
Yeah. I'm gonna tell you where the game swing.
All love, Ohio. All love.
Yeah, Alabama had the.
Thanks for being a great sport, hey Ohio. We cook each other all the time, all over the place, man. That's part of it.
We do.
Thanks for being a great sport.
But Alabama had this advantage in the game until this sort of adjustment happened, and this might potentially be something that maybe we can talk about, is the fact that Georgia made a switch with Jamari Slayer pushing him inside guard, and then at right tackle, I think it was either Broderick Jones or was Amarius. It was one of those two, but they had that switch because Jamari Slayer was getting killed by Will Anderson the entire game. As soon as they brought in, I think it was Broderick Jones. As soon as they brought in Broderick Jones at right tackle, Broderick Jones actually had we want to talk about which game limited Will Anderson. In that probably mid-third quarter, Broderick Jones did probably the best job I think I've ever seen a tackle doing Will Anderson. He did a great job. They ran inside. They ran a lot of inside zone with Jamari Slayer, pretty much pushing in Byron Young. And we rotated a lot, but we got dominated pretty much in that mid of the third quarter. And then for the most part, our defense got worn out. We made a lot more mistakes. We had a block kick by Devontae Wyatt, which then all of a sudden they ran the ball for 75 yards. Why? Key block. Jamari Slayer pretty much just mauled Byron Young out the way, opening up a big gashing hole, which James Cook took it to 7 yards. They scored a touchdown. But ever since then, with that momentum swing, it's like they simply just made those adjustments. And I think that for the most part going into this game, if there's any sort of probably maybe a little bit success that maybe you can key an eye on, it is maybe that interior offensive line for Texas. If they can just get some momentum going, or maybe throughout the game, there's an adjustment, but maybe you bring somebody in to a point. Because again, as much as we're talking about our Alabama defensive line, we still have questions of our own. Because again, it was Utah State, right?
No doubt
that Texas does have a better offensive line than Utah State. But if they make adjustments, if something's not working, they make some adjustments, some tweaks here and there on the offensive line, and they do start to get a little bit more of a push in that interior, that could be a key. Remember, Florida, how did they get a lot of their success in the running game? They attacked Alabama's interior defensive line by running a lot of those insides, quarterback draw plays. Damian Pierce had a game, right? A lot of people like to kind of bring up Isaiah Spiller in the A&M game. I forgot, Tyron Davis-Price, kind of the same thing. A lot of its big runs came throughout the interior. So that's the one key that I'm very interested in seeing is, well, if there's a struggle with that Texas offensive line, will there be adjustments being made just in case if something doesn't really work out, where maybe we can put somebody that's a little bit more physical, or maybe someone that's a more comfortable interior, push them out on the outside, see if we can try to bring somebody in to kind of change it. And if that does, if that does kind of create a little bit of a spark, maybe we can get something going. Because when that run game gets going, just very similar to the Georgia and the national championship, it opens up the pass. It opens up our secondary to bite a little bit more, because we could not stop Georgia at all in that second half. But that's kind of more of a common theme that happened to us last year with a lot more teams than just that Georgia game.
That's true.
Yeah, so there are a few comments I want to go through. Mark, I want to know who the people that advocate for running at Will Anderson are, because those are the people I need in charge of Texas play calling. Those are the individuals I need calling the game for Texas, because that's the game plan I love. Run it at Will Anderson all day long. Do it.
Yeah, go on Twitter. There's some top analysts suggesting that, not top analysts, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, no. Please let me know, Mark, who said that, because that's, in all seriousness, I'm not saying avoid him. I think, Steven, you put it perfectly. You don't avoid him, but to go at him is to genuinely run into the mouth of the beast, right? Like, I don't know.
Playing into his strength.
Well, you think no one's tried that before, too? Like, we were this.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah,
Thank
he's
you.
actually a really bad player if you just run right at him.
Ask Arkansas that question. Ask Arkansas when they tried that.
Yeah.
And he just smacked everybody. But look, I hear you. You can't run away from him. The other thing I would like to is D's commented a few times that Alabama has relied so much on the transfer portal that they can't develop their own players, and they use Jamison Williams. And look, Jamison was a great addition for Alabama. You're never going to hear me argue about that one. Alabama is the only college institution to put 2 wide receivers into the first round of the NFL draft in back-to-back years, and they would have done it 3 years in a row had John Mechie not gone down with an injury, because he'd have gone over 1,000 yards, and the only reason he didn't go in the first round was because he's coming off of that knee injury. No other college has done that, and Alabama's rate of development is statistically higher than anybody, even if you isolate for 5-star status, meaning if you gave everybody the exact same recruiting class, Alabama develops at a higher clip. So
that's a crazy statement. You got to look at, man. I mean, think about this. Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, Smith. Smith. I mean, come on, man. You guys have developed wide receivers. You guys could be wide receiver U, to be honest with you. I'm just going to be honest with you.
Us, Ohio State, LSU.
Yeah. I mean, but honestly, since Saban's been there, Alabama could easily be wide receiver U. I don't think it's close, to be honest with you.
Honest question for Bama fans, though. I totally agree. And you guys are winning championships before the portal. Do you think that – because even in my video, you brought in 2 wide receivers, you brought in a left tackle. Have you seen any degradation in development in the past 1 to 2 years?
I don't believe so. And here's the thing, though. If you have a guy that's on the transfer portal that's willing to come to your institution, that is a legit dude and can do what Jamison did, I'd argue you'd be crazy not to take them, right? Like, even if you recruit and develop it the way Alabama does, I think that you still take them. Now, that being said, I think development may not be what the issue is. I think maybe there were some recruiting misses. I think that is a bigger issue that was had in the wide receiver room than was development, right? Because that's just my personal opinion on that. And I do want to address this, and then I'll let Nate. I actually agree with you. Georgia had a bunch of lost pieces going into that championship game. And like I said, I still think there were opportunities to be made for Alabama. So Georgia was just a better team that day. There absolutely is no excuse coming from here whatsoever.
Too, man.
Yeah, and it's an all-time great defense, right? Like one of the best ever. So, yeah.
I'm sorry. I want to defend you real quick, though, Ty. I mean, some of y'all right now listening are hearing what you want to hear, and you're not listening to everything that's being said, because I never heard him make excuses. It was actually Nino that brought up the receiver.
Yeah, I brought up
Ty,
one,
yeah, you brought it up, and you're not an Alabama fan. Ty started out with what he thought was the reason why he lost. So to then come back on here and talk about, oh, you making excuses, you're cherry picking certain things that are getting said. Please listen to the whole discussion and keep up, guys.
My man laying down the law.
Steve,
no, because Mark over here coming at me. Mark, one of us gonna be right tomorrow. One of us gonna be very wrong, brother.
What's Mark's comments?
No, Mark coming at me. So hey, one of us gonna be right, one of us gonna be wrong, brother. At the end of the day, we'll shake hands.
Hey, that's what it is. Gents, what are your thoughts on the development with wide receivers at Bama?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, for the most part, I think ever since we lost that group with Devontae, we all knew that was not going to, we all knew that as soon as Devontae Smith and that 2017 class was going to be gone, that we were going to be, it was not going to be the same. Because even before then, right, a lot of people kind of tend to forget that even before that Devontae Smith class, like, yes, we were recruiting a lot of really great players, Robert Foster, Cameron Sims and stuff like that. But for the most part, I mean, we had Calvin Ridley, he was like a first-round receiver. We had Amari Cooper, who was a first-round receiver. But after that, it was, again, you had a Darius Stewart. I mean, you had Cam Sims again. I mean, we didn't really, we were putting players as far as receivers into the NFL draft, but they weren't high notable names until we had that 2017 class. And ever since then, we haven't really had a class that can topple it, because 2018, you had Waddle. And then the following year, that's Trayshawn Holden's class. I think that's Trayshawn Holden, somewhere around the line. That's either 19 or 20, one of those 2 years. But, ever since then, that's where we haven't had those elite, top of the crop elite prospects. Not until what we had in 2021 and obviously the new 2022 class. So in a way, a lot of those players are still fresh. So I don't think that there's that's much more of a development issue. I just kind of think for the most part, that's kind of just more of a recruiting area, because we still had a lot of those top notable guys on our rosters when we were still trying to recruit some of the top players, and they ended up going elsewhere, right? They ended up going to Ohio State. They ended up going elsewhere. And for the most part, I think even Ohio State, I think even they're going to come across this problem where there's so many mouths to feed that eventually someone's going to leave, like Jamison Williams, who was a highly touted borderline 5-star recruit. So that's kind of where we struggle with. Again, 2019 and 2020, those weren't great recruiting classes for the receiving position, right? We had some late 4-star prospects that were, 16th, 17th, around that line, ranked receivers in the country. We didn't have top 2, top 3 until 2021 and 2022. And even still, those are still really, really young players that are still in development, right? Ja'Cory Brooks, he's still learning. He's still developing. He's still growing.
He's going to be an awesome player.
Yeah, he's going to be a really good player, but he's still got to grow. Ajayi, obviously, that's the one that I think has the most upside. He's at Texas. He didn't really work out. But JoJo Earl, if he never would have torn, I think it was either a meniscus or an ACL injury, he would have been starting camp. Yeah. He was dominating. He was having a great camp. He would have been starting at slot receiver. And I believe he would have balled out, because even in the Miami game where he first started, he showed out. Another receiver, by the way, that was developed by Bama, Slade Bolden. But again, we can get into all that stuff. But again, so it's still too early in this process. But even then, Kobe Prentice, you're going to be hearing a lot of his name throughout the year. Kobe Prentice, you're going to be hearing if Aaron Anderson can recover, which is, by the way, still recovering from an injury, that could be a baller for us. Kendrick Law's playing. I'm trying to think. Isaiah Bond, for the most part, made some big plays in that Utah State game for the most part. So again, we're still learning. We're still trying to grow and develop. But we had a 2-year gap where we just didn't really recruit that well. I don't think that was much more a developmental issue. And even if they were, again, we did get transfers. At the end of the day, we still have to develop those players, right? Jermaine Burton, for the most part, I still feel like he needs to get developed a little bit more. He wasn't perfect from Georgia. There was a lot more things that he needed that he struggled with that I think that for the most part we'll get it cleaned up with him. Jamison Williams was almost the same the same in that way. So, just because you're bringing a transfer, it doesn't mean that they're automatically going to be an immediate contributor, just blow everyone out the roster. No, those players have to earn their spots. Those players are going to have to learn. Those players, they have to learn the playbook, and they're going to have to grow and develop. So that also, a lot of people just think just because the transfers that they're just, they're already set. No, they're still college players. They're still players that are still learning the game. They're still growing.
Yep.
Hey, Chance, though, one thing we got to consider too, and I think just to add to this, the receivers are always going to be money at Alabama as long as you have people like Bryce Young continue to play quarterback for you.
Yeah,
exactly.
Because they elevate everybody around them. So even when guys are young or new, and I know that was an issue, in that one instance in the championship game, but if I give Bryce 6 weeks to work with those guys and get them ramped, trust me, they're going to be a unit, right? So the quarterback play that you guys have had over the last few years, whether receivers have been young, whether they've been transfers, or whether they've been guys that developed, your quarterbacks elevate them. And I really am excited to talk about Bryce because what I see him doing at the line of scrimmage in college is so impressive. Josh Allen last night, Jance, you were talking about this on Twitter. Josh Allen, when he first came in the NFL, and he was so raw and had no idea what he was doing and inaccurate and all these things. And you watch Josh Allen last night and where he's gotten to, and he's directing traffic.
Whole different quarterback, man.
And it's a completely different. You see that with Bryce Young already, and so that's one of the things where I'm excited to see how we kind of play chess with him, including our coaching staff, quite frankly, and try to set some traps, for him or whatever we can do. I don't think we're going to stop him, but trying to slow him down or create some doubt or mistakes and some negative plays. I'm really curious about that.
Yeah, and I think this is a great time to talk about Bryce Young because the one thing I think whenever we look at Bryce Young, and especially in a game like this that's so difficult, we can talk about the inconsistencies Alabama has faced on their offensive line, and they're there. And as Working Man says, blitz him, and look, whenever you're facing an inconsistent offensive line, that can be the answer. But when you break down Bryce, he's incredibly dangerous against the blitz, to an alarming rate. And the one thing about Bryce that I call Bryce Young a magician, and the reason is simple. Because for most quarterbacks, we talk about this all the time. Get them out of their pocket. Get them out of the pocket. Get them on the go. Make them uncomfortable. If you get Bryce Young out the pocket, now you're dealing with an entirely new monster altogether. Because Bryce in the pocket is one thing. When Bryce escapes, now you don't know whether he's going to run it, but he uses his legs as an extension of the passing game as well as any quarterback in college football. I don't know if I'm going to say the best, but I don't know that I can name a quarterback I think does it any better than he does. So for Bryce Young, whenever we're looking at how he can affect this game, Steven, you brought it up. You got the pre-snap reads he does. This kid is cerebral, right? He knows the pre-snap reads. And we even saw a sequence last week where he's signaling to Trayshawn Holden on the right side of the formation, giving all these signals. The second they hike the ball, he just darts it to the left side to Jermaine Burton.
I love the dummy calls. Yes.
Knowing exactly where he was going the whole time, but he's audibling for 15 seconds that he's going up here to Holden, and then just boom. Sensei says CJ Stroud's better than Bryce Young. I don't know that I'd say better, but Stroud's a hell of a quarterback. You're not going to find me saying anything bad about Stroud, but Bryce Young is an absolute magician.
He's not better than Bryce. I'm going to tell you what CJ Stroud has. CJ Stroud has the NFL size, and that's what people are so enamored at that Bryce doesn't have yet. Bryce is just not a bigger kid. Honestly, if Bryce was 6'3", 210 pounds or 215 pounds, it wouldn't even be a discussion. I just think people are worried about Bryce because he's just not the most thick of kid right now. But just give that kid some time, man. Bryce is a beast, man. He's a beast.
Terry, Bama's offensive line was statistically just about as good as Texas's offensive line last year. So that kind of gives an indication as to how elite Bryce Young was. So yes, the offensive line matters, but he also was doing this at Mater Dei in the Trinity League. out there in California. And if y'all know high school football,
It's
Playing against
goodness,
Yes.
Bosco and IMG
Yeah.
Academy, and
It's the league.
yeah, it is D League. It is the all-star of all
and
stars
who
on
was-
every team.
Who was his recruiter? Who brought
Oh,
him
we
to
know.
Bama?
We know.
yeah,
Yeah, no. Look, you're never gonna hear me keep it anything but 100, right? Like, I'm gonna keep it real with you. Yeah, it was Steve Sarkisian. But
And I just tell people that, like, and it's not a shot at you guys or anything. It's just more context of like Sark's track record with quarterback and where he's, Arch, Quinn, all these guys.
spoken for. There's a reason why whenever there was the whole Arch saga over the summer, you guys always heard me in my videos break it down. Like, look, you can take nothing away from Nick Saban as a head coach. Any quarterback in the country would love to go play for Nick Saban. You can take nothing away from Kirby. Georgia is right there every year, and they just broke through. But if you're looking at the 3 top teams that many people had as the top 3, there was one guy that was an offensive-minded guy and a quarterback guy, and that was Steve Sarkisian. And that's why the entire time I was like, I mean, I certainly can never count Alabama out of a recruiting battle, but Texas makes sense.
Yeah.
Texas is the one that makes sense here. But I'm really interested. What are y'all's thoughts on stopping or limiting Bryce Young?
It's going to be really, you're not going to stop him. Like I said, in my video, I said, you're going to heat him up, but you're not heating up Bryce. You're heating up the O-line because Bryce is going to have hot routes. Remember, Georgia tried to do that to y'all earlier in the game, and Bryce was getting it every time. So you want to wear out over time. You want to get edge pressure, get him from behind, those kind of things. You're going to have to send unique stuff. But I really don't know what you do because he also, the offense – kind of self-limits. They like to pass short, and then they'll send something over the top. So it's not like you're constantly defending a deep ball either. But with the pre-snap reads, these are option slot routes for BOB. So it's like you're wrong no matter what. So I really don't know. One question real quick. Him running so much against Utah State, do you think that that's just because it was there and it was against Utah State, or do you think that he's been instructed – hey, we're not 100% in the offensive line, so take off if it's there?
Both.
I think
both. I think it was there, and I think last year he had so many times where he could have ran, even if for a 5-yard gain, right? Even if for a 5-yard gain where he may not have. I think this year they're trying to tell him, you're an athletic dude. You're not Vince Young out here, right? Like he's not, but he's shifty and he's quick. He can make you miss, and he's just really interesting with the way he plays football. So I'd say it's both.
Are you comfortable with that? If he's running not to that level of Utah State, but a Heisman quarterback running that's a smaller quarterback?
Yeah. I'm comfortable because Bryce Young, he doesn't take a lot of huge hits. The only time he takes I'm more worried about him getting hurt inside the pocket than him actually scrambling, because our offensive line at times, man, can get it. You almost can get him killed at times. But no, when he's breaking away, he knows how to slide. He knows how to get down. I mean, he's been doing that pretty much his entire career, even at modern day. I mean, for the most part. So I'm actually more comfortable with him taking off.
That's what really scares me about Bryce is just over the past couple years, he didn't run much at all last year, right? Honestly, he didn't run much at all. My thing was I think it was the coaching in him from the previous coaching staff to, break the pocket, scramble to look downfield and make the play. And I think this year it just makes it more scarier that when he did break the pocket, him having 100 yards rushing in this game, although it was against Utah State, it's still showing that the dude has wheels. And like, don't forget, I can do that too, right? So it's going to be like an unstoppable freaking machine when it comes to him, because he's already the Heisman Trophy winner. We know what he can do with his arm, but once you add that damn running game to his game now, it's scary. It's scary, man. It is what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. It just makes him so difficult to stop, because one of the things I talked about, if Bryce escapes and goes into the pocket, you might have a linebacker go off of their assignment, step up and try and account for him.
And
we know Bryce is just going to go thank you and do, because he does it time and time again. So there's a word, and Homer, I'm glad you said it. You and I kind of always joke about this, the cliche football terms, right? That you say that are kind of filler terms, but in this time they actually, Texas's defense has got to play disciplined. I mean, disciplined through and through. Because if you play Bryce, that's just kind of what you have to do, or else he's going to start making you pay. That's not to say Bryce is infallible. He's not. He's just really unique with what he brings to the table. Now, it's not just Bryce, though. Jahmyr Gibbs comes to the situation. Alabama has got a really intriguing rushing attack, and offensively, there's some new, but there's a lot of talent in this wide receiver room. Where are we looking at right now on Texas's side? What are the wide receivers? What are the offensive playmakers you're most concerned about, and how are you looking at to stop that? And Jance, who are you looking to break free this game?
I want to start here. This is what scares me. I think you're again. Homer said it best. You're gonna contain him, Bryce, and try to manage the situation as best you can. Try to have some negative plays you can capitalize on. If a ball gets away from him, if he misses a throw downfield, if we get our hands on any type of footballs, whether anything, we have to capitalize. Period. Mm-hmm. But you're not going to slow it. He's going to get his yards. He's going to put points up. That is what we can't have is all of Jahmyr Gibbs stuff. We have to take something away, and I think we have to try to make Bama one-dimensional. If Bama's able to get everything they can with Jahmyr Gibbs as well as in the pass game, then how are we keeping up? How are we making this? Because I feel like there's a range of score this game has to be in for Texas in order to really win. I don't think once we get past a certain point, we're going to be able to swim and heavily rely on Quinn Ewers and everybody in the second game of the season to just be in this type of shootout against that Bama defense. So Jahmyr Gibbs is a guy where I'm like, we have to figure out. He's so explosive. He's so good, like you mentioned in terms of the comp with Bijan catching the ball out of the backfield. Even Jace McClellan and Roy Day Williams, like we saw all of them getting action out of the backfield. That's something that is also a subject of extension of Bryce as well. So that's what scares me. I can't have them. One of the things that's underrated about Bama is Brian Robinson last year was still able to run for however many yards he ran for.
Yeah, almost 1,400.
With a suspect offensive line.
Almost 1,400 yards last year with a suspect line.
And no offense and no running back depth behind him because of the injuries.
It was him.
Trey Sanders is still recovering from a car wreck. So.
Yeah. If you can't slow that down and Bryce can still hand the football off or check to handing the football off and y'all getting 5 and 6 and 7, and then what we can't. I don't think we'll be able to keep up over 4 quarters, personally.
Yeah, Steven, I got to piggyback on that, man, because you stole my answer. Gibbs is the guy who I am kind of most scared about right now. Just as well. This is not your prototypical Alabama running back, right? We've seen you guys have, the Najees and have the Henrys, some of your bigger guys that can just plow, right? They do their damn thing. Najee can catch the ball also. But the thing about Gibbs is, I think what Gibbs is going to do, he's going to run and he's going to get 2 yards here, 3 yards there, 2 yards there. And I think what's going to happen is going to get that Texas defense a little bit of false hope that, hell yeah, we got him. But this guy, man, if he gets one seam, he can bust it for 75 yards in a heartbeat, and just do his thing. And also, just catch it from the backfield as well. So Gibbs is the guy who I think I'm most worried about, because this is the kind of running back that we haven't seen here at Bama in quite some time. That's not a bruising back, but a guy who can kind of do like a little bit of everything, but also has that speed to break it down also.
Yeah.
All right, I'm auto focusing.
I knew instantly when I saw it. I was like, what is he trying to give me a
high five?
There we go.
Is that? Oh yeah, it's like ET through the. Okay, but Jahmyr Gibbs is someone who adds in another element for us. One of the things we did against Utah State, I was so happy we did. We had plays where it was McClellan and Jahmyr Gibbs in the backfield at the same time. That is something I need more of, right? I need those two in the backfield at the same time. Jace, right on time, Brock. Right on time. Jace McClellan is someone who I think is flying under the radar. And guys, if you're watching this, don't let it happen to you. Very, very talented running back Jace McClellan is. I'm super excited to see what he brings to the table this year. If we're looking at the running back rooms, though, guys, what a treat we have in store for us this weekend. Texas with Bijan, Roschon, Keelan. Then you have Bama with Jahmyr Gibbs, McClellan, Roydell Williams, Trey Sanders. I mean, there is so much talent in these rooms. we as fans are really just the benefactor of what a great experience that's going to be. The one area I do want to talk now about is the defensive back for Texas against the wide receivers for Alabama. How confident are we in those matchups right there?
Homer, you want to get this one?
Not confident, but not confident in that, like, you know, like we know that it's going to be bad. It's a question mark, like how Jance was saying earlier. We'll have to see. Jameson's an older player. That's probably where I'm most kind of nervous, but I like Ryan Watts a lot, former Ohio State guy.
Very
He's big.
talented
You want to
player.
talk about somebody that can press, and in the red zone, you're not going to be able to goal line fade him. Then we have Jatavian, who's our nickel, who has kind of been crowned as our best DB, even though he has not done it. Yeah. We haven't seen it on the field yet. It was all through spring and stuff. Then we have a young guy in Jalen Gilbo, who had an awesome first game, true freshman as well, that we're really excited for, that I think could be really special for us. It's the safety play that's going to be a really big question. I'm personally a big Anthony Cook fan. I think he's a smart player, an aggressive player, former corner. So he has some of those coverage traits. But when he was nickel for us last year, they always kept a safety over top because I guess they didn't like his long speed of being able to keep up. So I want to see how he'll look against really fast receivers deep. And then Jaron Thompson, not last year, but he kind of sparked the year prior. We were excited for him. And then last year he had some issues, he even got benched right towards the end of the year for us. So the DBs are – I do feel like they'll absolutely be better than last year because it was really bad last year, especially safety play. But it's a big question mark. We're gonna figure that out on Saturday. That's their first real test.
Now, if I may, before anybody else, I understand Gary Patterson is not on an on-field coaching role, but the guy's a defensive guru, right? Like, is there any confidence that his presence there is going to exponentially help this secondary?
They are playing more flat-footed. They're doing some TCU type stuff, like in their actual technique. That you'll notice they're standing there flat-footed. They're not taking bait. So I like that kind of stuff. I don't know how much is really going to be his kind of split field, Gary Patterson staple coverage. But when I did my video talking to the players, Anthony Cook said he's been awesome. He can't do it on the field, but off the field, he's been awesome. Kind of, he can't technically coach for the NCAA, but he's been able to give them nuggets and help them out. So as far as visually seeing it, they're playing a lot more flat-footed, which I like. Instead of just bailing and running off, they're waiting to see if the run is coming, and then they'll make their decision. That was a staple of TCU stuff. But I hope we see more influence there. I think we're playing much more aggressive this year. I can tell you that because we were playing off on everything. So you had a guaranteed 5 yards. And with Bryce, he would eat us alive with guaranteed 5 yards every single time. So we need to play more man under stuff. I really like your receivers. But so since Bryce gets cooking underneath so well, I do want to take away some of those options. So there's some schematic stuff I'm excited to see that we're going to change, even though we can get beat over the top at times. And I do feel better about the DBs from last year. We just have to see against an opponent like Alabama.
Yeah, absolutely. Nino, Steven, what are y'all's thoughts?
I actually like Thompson. I'm seeing the comment there down from Jackie. Jackie's one of my brothers, man. But Thompson's he might be probably the smartest guy in the secondary. He's making all the calls, and it seems like all the players. He's the one who's getting everybody lined up. So you can see once we're screwing up on plays, or he's like, hey, you get over there, just what they're running. So it seems like the team is just a little bit more, kind of well put together now. I think it's just because of his comms from the backfield, right? So, I do like Thompson. I like Cook a lot too. He played cornerback, he played nickel. Now he's playing safety, so he can see the whole field, as well. I'm a big fan of Watts too, just his size alone. What he's like 6'2", folks. We're like 6'2", 205 or so. So just his size alone. Yeah, he's a huge kid. He actually tackled really well, man. So he's like an extra safety out there, also. So just a combination of those three. And I think Jameson, this is his last year, right? So I think he has a lot to prove, and when somebody has their back against the wall and has to prove something, I'm hoping that we can get a more consistent guy. I think this year we should be able to, people kind of love to forget that this is the first time in his whole career here at Texas that he's had a position coach for 2 years straight. You know, he played wide receiver his first year. He had, a coach his second year at corner. His third year was Chris Ash. His fourth year was PK. And now, guess what? His fifth year is now PK as well, with Terry Joseph coaching him. So this is the second year that he's been in one system. And so I think with that little continuity piece there, he should play just a little bit better this year.
Our highest graded defensive player, for however you feel about Pro Football Focus, last week was Shaylin Gilbo. And I really like his technique and his aggressiveness. Watts, same thing, technique, aggressiveness in the run game. When I was hesitant to answer the question initially, it was more so about things I haven't seen yet and the uncertainty that's still there from previous trauma. How do they play the ball in the air downfield? Like, how do they, like, when they get in situations where the play gets extended? And this isn't just them. That's also in conjunction with, if we're not able to consistently get pressure, if we have to start blitzing too much, and, now I have nothing but, 4 guys back deep. One of the things that has plagued Texas for so long is the inability to properly play the ball in the air. And so that is something that, until I see it, because they didn't have the personnel to test us last week. They didn't. So we were able to look good being aggressive. And the technique was sound, okay? All the football people will tell you, look at Gilbo, run and pass. But when Bryce starts, moving around a little bit and somebody releases and the ball's in the air, and whether it's behind and you got to catch up and play the hands or look up and try to play the football, do you guys have the ability to do those things to make plays and help the team?
Yeah. Now, Jance, from the Alabama perspective, right? What wide receivers are you looking for to break free this week and really affect the game in a positive fashion for the Crimson Tide?
Well, I'm looking forward to Cameron Latu being back now that he's cleared. It'll be interesting though, because I do believe that probably the only linebacker, let's say if there's linebacking matchups, will be probably Overshawn. I think Overshawn definitely has all the size and capability in the world to kind of shut that down if he really needs to. But Latu being back for us, that's going to be really huge because for the most part, you can use him in the slot. You can use him as an end line. He's a pretty solid blocker as well, which for the most part, in that Utah State game, it kind of made us a little bit more predictable when we had Klinsman and we had Robbie Oots in the game, because Robbie Oots is more of a blocking tight end, but he's not really – that's not what you want him to do. He's not a receiving guy. Cameron Latu being back for us, that's going to be very, very huge as far as just the amount of possibilities that we can run. We can definitely run a lot more 12 now. It seems like if we do run some 12, it's going to be with him and Klinsman, which, Klinsman actually had a pretty solid game as far as kind of filling in for Latu there. So that I'm looking forward to him. Kobe Prentice working his way in the slot. I thought, again, he really impressed me only because he didn't really do, as far as just the execution. He was perfect. He was incredible.
He looks ahead of schedule to me.
Yeah, he looks way ahead of schedule.
He's true freshman too, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he didn't early enroll, did he, Jens? He came in.
Came in the summer.
He's fast. He's a fast kid, man. God, he's fast.
And here's the thing that's so exciting. Aaron Anderson is another true freshman who is hurt right now, who was really impressing. But I'm going to pass it back to you, Jans, because I got excited with the Kobe Prentice. I apologize.
And Aaron Anderson, that's going to be another one. And Isaiah Bond too. Like I said, he had a 40-yard play that was called back because of a block in the back. But he would have, that's another guy also that can make some huge plays. But no, I'm really looking forward to Prentice only because out of all the receivers that I look to, compared to last week, whether it was Trayshawn or Jermaine, Kobe Prentice just looked the most comfortable. Like he was just ready for the moment. Like he was just demanding the ball in his hands. But no, for the plays that we gave him, we pretty much gave him some simple plays and some simple design routes, and he was able to execute it and run after the catch wise. He was excellent. So I'm looking really forward to that because I do believe that, for the most part, I like Ryan Watts a lot from that Texas secondary, but I am looking forward to their nickel play. And just some of the sort of matchups that if Kobe Prentice can get those direct matchups, is he going to have a clear, is that going to be a guy that can have a clear cut advantage? So I'm looking forward to probably that matchup, but definitely Latu for sure. Him being back just opens up our receiving game that much more.
With Prentice, one of the things I pay attention to with young guys like that, especially game 1, game 2, is body language. And like you said, he was demanding the football. He was so engaged. He looked like there was no nerves. And that reminded me a lot of Xavier Worthy for us last year when he came in late and then won the job, but like from jump was so confident and looked like he was already a college veteran in terms of just his body language. So I think that was something that I, to note with Prentice as well.
Ms. Bonnie said it before. Brandon Thompson's mom, she told me, man, as far as like the work ethic that Xavier Worthy puts in, man, as far as him going in early and staying in late, and him and Brandon are racing, and they're trying, like, Xavier Worthy, man, as far as what I've been hearing, as far as just the competition, like really just challenging a lot of those Texas players, and just it's like it's alpha male status. I mean, that Kobe Prentice is almost that same exact way. And it's not just him; it's a lot of the freshmen, freshman class. Like they're like it's like they're demanding for jobs. They're demanding for it, and they're going out and trying to earn it. Jaheim Otis went from a guy that had no business playing to losing around 45 pounds of weight, and then he's to a position now that even though he's still co-starting with DJ Dell, he's about to take the job away. I think from what we've been hearing around campus and from the game footage that's been put, he's going to take that job. And it's just, and that goes for a lot of players. Jeremiah Alexander, he's had a great spring and a great training camp. That's another outside pass rusher that not a lot of people are going to talk about, but sooner or later people will find out about. So just overall wise, I'm just excited for the class.
Totally unrelated. Mark, your last comment was hilarious.
I saw that.
That last comment, Mark. Mark, you got laughing. It. That's funny. That is freaking funny.
That's why I was laughing.
Holding it up, dude.
I love you, Mark.
I wasn't laughing at you, Janice. I was laughing at that, man.
Mark, that one was funny. You got me on that one.
I have to when I was saying too soon, I was meaning because I'm a Bama fan and you brought up Hall as wide receivers to watch for Alabama against Texas. Too soon. Give me until after this week until we bring up a Jai Hall, because look, we know how talented he is, right? And I'm sure y'all do too, but we as Bama fans know how gifted the young man is. And I really hope that he's able to get right, show what he can do on a football field, because goodness gracious, if he does that, he's going to play on Sundays. I don't think too many people would debate that. So yeah, that's going to be super interesting. Jance, to your point though, when you look at the freshman wide receivers alone that played in that game for Alabama against Utah State, you're talking Isaiah Bond, Kendrick Law, and Kobe Prentice. 3 true freshmen getting meaningful snaps. Isaiah Bond is a legit track star. Like, that's what he does. And I don't know if y'all saw this. Kendrick Law had 2 plays, I believe, where he straight up smacked someone down on a block as a true freshman. Now, I've said this. Yeah. Actually, you and I, if I'm not mistaken, after he committed to Bama, you came on a live stream with JP, Chris, Jan,
told you that is that guy.
And we talked about Kendrick. That's right. Yeah. We did. And the interesting thing about Law and Anderson, we hear Nick Saban say all the time, oh, that kid is very talented, but he needs to figure out what it takes to be successful. For the first time in a long time, we heard Nick Saban talk about Kendrick Law and Aaron Anderson saying, they are very talented, and they came in knowing what it takes to be successful. That terrifies even me, and I'm an Alabama fan, that Nick Saban is laying that praise at them. Now, as we wrap this down, I kind of want to just kind of talk to each of you. What are your major keys to victory in this game for your team? What are the areas you need to find success? What has to happen for you to get the win?
Sergeants.
Yeah, I can start. I think for us, it's just simply execution. We can't beat ourselves. Very similar to what my Buffalo Bills were doing in that first half by simply just with the turnovers and the drop catches. Oh boy, I just don't get me started on that. But it's simply for us. It's just execution. We got to execute. Defensive line, we simply have to do our job. Continue to pressure Quinn Ewers, make him feel like he's in the moment, and get after the quarterback. Do what we do best for the most part. I think our secondary. We got to go out there and we just got to execute. Our secondary, for the most part, Pete Golden, for the love of God, please do not give us these complex design plays. Just simplify it. You don't got to do too much. Do not try anything new with this secondary in this game. Not in this one. Not in this one, please. And then for the most part, offensive line. I would love for us to get a lot better there, especially in pass protection. We struggled a little bit with those inside stumps with Utah State. Kendall Randolph was, to put it nicely, he was getting his ass kicked. in those inside stunts. So he needs to get better there. Tyler Steen, I understand this was his first game starting for us as well. I think he's going to get a little bit better, but that's a player that definitely needs to be improved. Latham, we talk about the bright spots on the offensive line. Definitely Latham was, but I would like to see a lot more of these guys, right? Emil Ekiyor, right? Darian Dalcourt, because I don't think the job is fully secured for him. I think he's still competing with Seth McLaughlin, because the way that Seth McLaughlin ended that season is in the toughest part of our schedule, especially he was our best, arguably besides Evan New, our best pass blocker. So for the most part, this offensive line needs to get a lot better. It needs to, especially because we're going against a better front seven than compared to Utah State. So that's one of the things that obviously when I take a look back, I'm like, okay, even though statistically we dominated Utah State's defensive line in that front seven, there were issues that I was able to see, some glaring kind of issues that I look back last year and say, okay, these are the same things that we struggle with, and now it's kind of happening in this game. So is Eric Walford? I understand it's a long season, it's a long process. But in this early part of the season, I do wonder if PK is going to take a look at that Utah State game, look at the things that defensive line was able to have success with, and maybe try to implement a couple of those things. Maybe not a lot, but implement a couple of those things within that defensive line. Because honestly, in my opinion, that's the only way I think Texas is going to win this game. If they win that battle between us and that offensive line, it opens up PK's defense to a lot more things needed to. And that's something that you go back in that Auburn game, where the concern was for Auburn was, can our defensive line get a pass rush? Because we want to play cover one and cover zero. That's what we want to play. We want to man our corners up. I mean, you ask Roger McCurry when he said that, hey, did you guys run any other coverage in Alabama? And he said, no, we simply ran cover one and cover zero. And our guys were just left on the island because we were so confident that our defensive line was just we were able to do what they wanted to do with that game, that it made our job a lot easier. So that's my fear going into this game, is I don't want that defensive line to be comfortable to a point where that all of a sudden the secondary, the secondary for them, it opens up some things for them, especially their linebacking core, maybe to potentially send more pressure or to be in a position where they feel comfortable, like that Louisiana Monroe game. So for us, it's all about execution, especially on the offensive line and our secondary, the two question marks in our team. I feel like we could do that. We'll be fine.
It's going to have to be early success. Sorry, Nick. It's going to have to be early success for us on offense. So first and second down, we cannot get behind the sticks with your pass rush, period. They cannot pin their back. So normally you want to pass on first down. Analytics-wise, it's a better move. But if Quinn is not precise and knowing what he's seeing early, then you have to lean on Bijan. So you want Bijan to make Heisman plays almost out of thin air at times. It's not always going to be because the blocking scheme was perfect. It's going to be because he can make people miss in a phone booth. So if we're consistently getting 5 yards on first down, we have a shot. If we are getting slowed down, because that also means we can take our shots, right? 2nd and 5, those kind of situations. They don't know, is the pass coming, is the run coming, or is the deep shot coming? But if we become predictable, and Nick will tell you, we talked about it, we were awful on 3rd and long against ULM.
Mm-hmm.
So 3rd and short, we can get it to Sanders. We can do those kind of things. But we were not successful in any 3rd and long passing or running. So I think the highlight is Bijan versus your linebackers, particularly, and our interior offensive line. If we can consistently get 5 yards first down, we have the whole playbook. That'll be awesome. On defense, frankly, you have to hope that Alabama makes mistakes. So it has to be offensive line issues. Bryce doesn't have his best game for whatever reason. That's going to be the trick on defense. But the way you win games is to score more than the other guy. And I know Alabama has – when people have tried to boat race Alabama, it hasn't worked. Alabama struggled against better defenses opposed to like Ole Miss just trying to throw the kitchen sink. But we just have to be successful, get 5 yards on first down, keep you guys guessing, because as soon as you guys know the pass is coming, we already struggle with 3rd and long. On top of that, it's the best pass rush in the nation. So that's the key for Texas to put up a fight there.
Yeah.
Hey, and also, Todd, just to piggyback on what Homer just said, so the 3rd and long, we had 5, instances where Texas was in 3rd and long, meaning, hey, guys, 7 yards or more. We were 0 for 5. Against you.
I knew it was bad, but I didn't realize it was bad.
So we were 0 for 5. We tried to run once and pass 4 times, 0 for 5. But my keys to success, definitely offensive line, how is this interior offensive line going to go against Bama's interior offensive line? I think that's going to be the game right there. So Jan Spacey said, he thinks that you guys' interior line is a little bit weaker, than the rest of the defense per se. And I think our, line just right there in the freaking interior is probably one of the weaker areas as well. What kind of push can we get to assure that Bijan gets going? One other thing is, what adjustments is Sark going to make, right? We came out in 12 a lot. I think in 12 personnel in this last game. I got the stats right here. 12 personnel in this last game. We had 20 plays out of 58 plays. We actually had 30 plays out of 58 and I think 11 personnel. But Sark did put a little wrinkle out there. He did 20 personnel twice and he did 21 personnel once. And I think that was to put that wrinkle out there just to put it on tape. I think Sark really likes to have some kind of 20 personnel out there with a combination. I think every one of those plays, it was Bijan and Keelan. Right. So, just trying to get the best matchup there. One of those plays, both guys split out and we had, just a straight empty set, so I think that's going to give just a great opportunity for Texas to get the ball out a lot quicker, having 5 guys who can catch the ball, basically get it, just get it out quick as possible. So you don't have Will Anderson and Dallas Turner breathing down our neck. Right. So I think that's for the, just for the offensive side of the ball. Also JT Sanders stretching the field and doing his thing. And the ball placement for Quinn. Quinn's ball placement has to be spot on. We can't have Quinn having ball placement like he had in that first drive. And I think that drive against, I think that first drive last week was an eye opener for him. And I think it was necessary. It's like, hey, I know I got the talent. I trust my arm, but I just can't do it like that. I got to be way smarter with the ball. And so I think if we can be smarter with the ball with his arm talent, maybe hit a deep shot or two, also, I think we'll be fine for the offensive side of the ball. On the defensive side of the ball, we had a lot of instances last week where we had guys in position to make tackles in the backfield for tackles for loss. Our linebackers were in the backfield, but they just didn't make the tackles. We got to tackle who's in front of you right there. We can't have a lot of missed tackles. And when we do have missed tackles, these guys got to be swarming to the ball like they were last week. Last week, they swarmed amazingly, right? So even when a guy had a missed tackle, we still had a bunch of people around to make that tackle maybe 1 yard down, right? So, be disciplined. Tackle what's in front of you. We can't let anything get behind us. I know, like you say, Ty, that's the cliche thing to say, right, is be disciplined. But for the Texas defense, that's really all we need to ask for. Last year, we didn't have the best defense in the country. We are, I think, ranked 100th. I think last year was like number 100. If we can be an average defense, I've said this to Steve and the Homer all the time. If we're an average defense, a number 65 ranked defense in the country, Texas wins 9 games last year. Texas has the opportunity to win probably more games than that last year if they had a defense just in the 60 to the 75 range. So play above average, tackle what's in front of you, play discipline, and don't be afraid, man. Go 100 miles per hour. Don't be afraid. Know your assignments and ball out. But if we can do those, I think Texas has a puncher's chance.
I agree with that was well said, Nino, and you made a great point about Quinn's ball placement. That is paramount. So a few things I want to mention. First off, Mark, I'm gonna answer your question because I thought I answered it before. I don't know if how I disrespected you or anything like that. I didn't call anybody names or anything like that. But I will answer your question because I thought I said this earlier. But what I said was run your offense. I'm not avoiding Will Anderson. I'm just saying I'm not going to go out of my way to target running the football at Will Anderson. I'm going to run the football at Dallas Turner. I'm going to run the football at Will Anderson. I'm going to run the football up the middle at DJ Dale. Right? I'm going to try to target Young. Do what you normally do. That's all I'm saying. Okay? I'm not going to waste time and waste early downs. Here's my reasoning. I'm wasting early downs running right at one person where that's a strength. And now I get behind on downs, and now we end up in second and third and long, and the game gets away from us. That's what I'm trying to avoid. Okay? I'm not trying to be disrespectful or anything. I appreciate your support, brother. Hopefully I answered your question. If you want to discuss more, DM me. You know where I'm at. You've been subbing for a while. I'm not trying to get personal or anything like that. Moving on to the next thing, special teams. All these big emotional games, especially what we saw last week, LSU, FSU. Jansen and I talked about this before. Special teams is so critical in terms of execution, what wrinkles people
Very
come
true.
up with. And quite frankly, we have a kicker, who, he had some great, really nice moments last week against ULM. And then we had, a kick where we didn't execute. Right. And so execution, you guys had a punt block last week against
True.
Utah State. Okay. We're the masters at blocking. One thing I know we can do is light up your punter, right? Like that's one thing I feel great about, right? I also feel great about directional kickoffs and some of the things we've been doing there. We had an adventure with our guy, Will Stone, kicking knuckleballs at the dude who wasn't used to it. And what did he do? He kept dropping it, right? And so little things like that for hidden yardage. Those are areas where you can have game-changing, momentum-changing plays. To me, turnovers are already big momentum changers. But when you block a punt or you block a kick, I just personally feel like that's just like another level of like shaking up a football team or energizing the football team. So one of the big elements here is just attention to detail across the board in special teams. It is always a factor in big games. You guys had JoJo Earl last year, right? Muffing punts, different things like that. So I would be remiss if we didn't mention some of those elements, but everything else, defensive line's got to play like they've got to play their asses off. There's no other way for me to articulate this. That will help the linebackers, that will help the secondary and trying to deal with the Bryce Young thing. But it starts and ends with my defensive line. Bo Davis is another one that's former saving guy. He knows what's up. This is as advantageous as a Bama offensive line as you can ask for if you're a Texas fan to try to exploit, in my opinion. Let's see how they do.
Yeah. And so I'm going to kind of go through, kind of give my takes and answer some questions. Rob asks, what did Utah do to keep Anderson out of the game? They didn't keep him out of the game. Rob, I want you to go back in that game. If you can get access to the all 22 cams, Will Anderson was an absolute menace in that game. They had a play where the quarterback was supposed to read the edge and either keep it or hand it off. If you do that, you don't have time to make the decision because as soon as he handed it off, Will Anderson smoked the running back. And if he would have been a half second late, Will Anderson would have smoked them both. Like that's how there's an interesting fact, right? And this is so interesting. Whenever Will Anderson was a freshman, they did a 10-yard split speed test. He was the second fastest guy on the team and had hit over 20 miles per hour by 10 yards. You know who the only guy faster than him was? Jalen Waddle. That was it. That was the Smitty year. Or I'm sorry, was that the Smitty? Yeah,
that was the Smitty year. That was the Smitty year.
That's the only guy that was faster than him on the entire roster.
That's incredible.
Jalen Waddle.
No.
So, yeah, that's my first key to victory, right? It's not just Will Anderson. It's Dallas Turner. It's the front, and it's this triple pass rush package we're going to get to see come out this Saturday. We haven't talked about. Ladies and gentlemen, there are going to be 3 5-star pass rushers on the field at the same time, gunning for Quinn Ewers at certain times in this game. Chris Braswell, Dallas Turner, Will Anderson, every single one of them ranked as the first or second pass rusher in the nation in their respective recruiting class. Bama's got them stacked. Then they have Jeremiah Alexander, Jahad Campbell. It gets a little bit dumb, right? The interesting thing for me, though, is what are the Alabama linebackers going to be able to do against the Texas playmakers, specifically Bijan and Jatavian Sanders, because that's where I think Texas offense is really going to be able to open things up, not only for those guys I just talked about, but for everybody, right? For Xavier Worthy, for Whittington, for whoever else is going to be that wide receiver 3 for y'all. I have a UT viewer who views my stuff real often, real great guy. He dropped a comment that said O'Meary was cleared or healthy.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes me so happy.
He caught his first pass last week.
That makes me so
9
happy.
yards last week.
And he's limited. He's still wearing his brace, but the fact that he's playing football and practicing, and he's he might depending on the situation, might be able to pop in red zone or something.
Exciting.
It's very exciting. Ty, I want to add something too.
Go ahead.
11 personnel.
Yep.
If we motion into empty, that's something we haven't really shown yet this year. But that's where I think that's a target where Bijan could be isolated in pass game out of empty. I think he could have some effectiveness there.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we know Steve Sarkisian will do it, right? We know that that's something he will absolutely look. I did a video after the national championship game when Steve Sarkisian was the offensive coordinator for Alabama, and I picked maybe 6 or 7 plays in that game, and there was a theme: eye candy. And that's the thing I talked about. The Alabama linebackers cannot get fooled by the eye candy because it's going to kill you. Sark's going to be able to hit it if they get fooled. So once again, the football terms, discipline, that's king, right? For both teams. Offensively, it's Bryce Young, right? Like Bryce Young is the guy that is the catalyst for this Alabama offense until we have some offensive line overhaul and they get right. So Bryce Young is the guy I'm going to be looking at in this. But the special teams, I'm so glad you brought that up. That's an area where I think if you're Alabama, you've got to pay a lot of attention to this week, because you cannot be in a situation where blocked punts are happening. What is something that happens anytime Alabama loses a game, right? If we really go back.
It's a block punt.
Well, it's not even that, Jance. It's crazy stuff. It's the kick six. What? When is that ever happening again? We sub out and all of a sudden we miss a field goal and they return. When does that happen?
Look at the 2015 Chad Kelly play where Chad Kelly just throws the ball. I mean, that wasn't the only play. It was like 7 other plays that were happening, but he just throws the ball up and it tips over 2 other defenders' hands and it falls right into the.
That's literally the next play I was about to talk about, where the ball is just popping around like a pinball everywhere, and someone just streaking touches it and takes it to the end zone. What? Who does this? And then last year, Zach Calzada all of a sudden looks like Peyton Manning 2.0.
Yeah.
What? No, right?
There's only been 2 games where we simply just we got dominated, and that was Auburn in 2017 in the Clemson game in the national championship. There's probably some more games.
Yeah, that Clemson game hurts to this day.
That's the 2 that comes up my head where we lost.
That's where you changed your defense, right? They were like, that was whenever they used the spread against y'all.
There was a lot that happened wrong in that game. We started it off with a pick 6. Right. And you can't start off against a Clemson defense with a pick 6.
Exactly.
The interesting thing about that, if you go back, we were able to drive from the 20 to the 20.
We had over 420 something yards total in that game. We were killing them in the entire. We just couldn't score.
We could drive it, not consistently, but we could do it. We could not hit pay dirt. Like we couldn't buy touchdowns. I'm not going to say it. I digress. But whenever I look at this game, those are the biggest matchups for me, and the special teams is a huge thing. Now, before I let y'all go, this is a question I have that's just purely a curious question for me. I want to hear from Texas fans, and Jance, I always want to hear from you. Is it fair to say that PK may not be on the hot seat, but out of everybody on this Texas staff, the most pressure is on PK right now? Is that fair to say? Because from the outside looking in, that's what it seems like to me.
If he has the 101st defense again, absolutely.
Okay, that's what I was. Yeah,
exactly.
And I like PK. I mean, I made a whole video on him. Like what he did at Boise State was incredible. At Washington, so I'm not saying he's a bad coach, but the reality is, if you have that bad of a defense in year 2, then people won't be as tolerant.
Exactly.
But yeah, out of all of our coaches, if you wanted to say who had the most pressure, it'd be him. And then you bring in Gary Patterson too, as a sounding board. That's a move that's interesting. So yeah, if you had to pick one coach, if the performance is bad again this year, then for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing here.
I just want to add to that. I mean, I agree it's PK, but there's a lot of pressure on Sark in this game. And it's not even just from a win-loss perspective. It's in terms of a competitiveness thing from a recruiting standpoint. We haven't even talked about the recruiting implications from this game. But there's a lot on Sark's plate as well. How the recent Nick Saban assistants have done against him. He's being measured against that, right? And so, again, I think a lot of people understand the context in which 57 freshman, sophomore out of an 85-person roster. It's game 2. It's non-con. We get all that. Young quarterback. But there's a certain level of fight of, hey, how do your guys respond to adversity? I think that even goes beyond PK in terms of what we're looking to see. I agree in terms of we're isolating one coach. Yeah, it's PK. That is, I don't need to add on to that. But Steve Sarkisian, to me, there's questions he needs to answer as a head coach. I know he's a good football coach. I know he can dial up scheme, play design, all that. That we don't question those things. But as a head coach in games like this, we need to see something from Sark to where we feel good, win or lose, where we're like, hey, we're going to be a threat come conference play. We're going to continue to get better throughout the season as a unit.
Yeah, exactly. And Steven, just like you said, yes, it's PK. PK is the obvious answer. But like you said about Sark too, is this is the game where, we've been talking about how players are going to, face this game when they finally get some kind of adversity, right? How are the players going to respond to, first thing tomorrow? How is that going to look to some of these players? Last year, when they hit a wall, they folded. This year, is it going to be different? Are they going to have the mental toughness and the mental aptitude to keep fighting, even if it doesn't go your way? Are we going to see guys go 100% where they're up 55-0 or down 55-0? Is that will to win still going to be there? Last year, let's just keep it real. We saw more than a few players just give up, and it was very depressing to see, especially as a grad, right? You don't want to see your team have some guys that do that. But are these guys going to be mentally tough enough to continue to compete, whether you're up or you're down? And so I think that's going to be the big question for Sark here tomorrow. And, how is his offense going to look? I mean, this is his offense, right? This is his offense. We made a lot of, videos and, just a lot of comments last year saying that if Sark had his quarterback in this system with an Xavier Worthy and a Bijan Robinson, how much different would this offense look, right? We couldn't hit a deep ball for nothing last year. Now we finally do have a guy who can throw that, the deep ball. We got a guy who can make every pass in the system. How is this offense going to look that now Sark has his guy that is actually throwing the ball for him now? So mental toughness and the look of the offense.
Yeah, Jance, what are you thinking?
Oh boy, it's gonna be interesting, man. That's not that much for me to say anymore, man. I'm ready. I'm ready to go.
I think we all are. Well,
Ding, ding.
I know, right? Ring the damn bell.
We've been going for 2 hours and it feels like it's been 30 minutes. The unfortunate part is we could probably go another 2 hours and still have plenty to talk about. I'm not going to do that to anybody here and certainly nobody listening because they've probably gotten tired of us already. But I do want to give everybody on the panel an opportunity to say their kind of final thoughts. And as always, let the people know where they can find your awesome content. We'll just start with Jance, then Homer, Nino, Steven. Let's get it.
Yep. Yeah. You guys can find me again on Twitter, Jant716, as far as you want to do, any collaborations, or if you simply just want to talk some ball with me or whatever you want to talk about, simply just, hit me up on Twitter and I'll definitely respond. YouTube, Jan Sports. That's where, again, that's, for the most part, a lot of college football reactions, NFL reactions, pretty much sports reactions, stuff like that. You guys can follow me there. Then also Buffalo Fanbase Sports. If you guys, again, want to talk more quality sports, definitely make sure to follow me on buffalofanbase.com or Buffalo Fanbase on YouTube with me and my co-host Kari Demos. For the most part, we pretty much talk about everything. So we're definitely Tuesdays, 7:00 p.m. Eastern Standard. If you're on the Central Time, 6:00, West Coast, 4:00. And make sure to catch us there.
Texas Homer, just YouTube me. You'll find me at Texas Homer, and I should have my UTSA video. We're talking Bama now, but I've already gone to UTSA.
That doesn't surprise me.
So that should come out Tuesday at noon, hopefully, and then always on Twitter you can hit me up. Same thing, DM me if you have any questions about football. I'm always happy to talk about the game.
Hey, folks. Nick Battle, aka Nino's Corner, man. Find me on Twitter, find me on YouTube. But Ty, I got to share something with you. Everybody knows that my wife's from Alabama, right? And I had 2 sister-in-laws that went to Alabama, 2 nieces that graduated from Alabama. So I'm going to share this text that my sister-in-law just sent me. And she never texts me. So let me see. Her last text to me was Father's Day. So I had to tell you something, right? So her text goes, "Hello, my brother. I just wanted to reach out to you and wish your team good luck on tomorrow. I would also like to extend my condolences to the Longhorns for this ass whipping that that you're going to endure. Roll Tide. See, that's the shit I got to go through, Ty. You know?
Don't let me get your phone number because he's gonna double down.
I told my wife I'm taking my son. Me and him are gonna watch the game somewhere else. And you can have the house. I don't want to hear a damn Roll Tide at all when I'm watching this game. All right. So
I'm gonna get your number tomorrow. You got a bottom dollar on that.
But that's what I got to go through. All right. That's what I got to go through. All right, man.
Hey, so this is Steven, Fanatic Perspective. Same thing, YouTube, Twitter, Fan Perspective, Fanatic Perspective. You can find us on there. Instagram, TikTok, the whole bit. We have some Dallas Cowboys content coming too, as we had NFL kickoff last night, and some cool things we're going to be working on. And same thing with Nick. I got family members too. My brother who's never been to Alabama, he grew up in Maryland, and he asked me this week or last week, he's like, "Hey Steve, it's time for me to make my debut. Let me come on and talk Bama." I said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because he's a troll. My brother's a professional troll. He's a troll on social media. That's why I don't promote his stuff. He's like an evil version of me. And so we don't need that on camera. That would be a horrible video. Because I'm on the phone with him. I'm like, "Hey man," I was like, "You know what? Let's test this out. Let's try to have a rational, let's be civil here for 2 seconds." And I'm like, "Hey man, what, Bryce Young, blah, blah, blah." He cuts me off and is like, "Roll damn Tide." And I'm like, "All right, you know what, bro?"
Yeah. All right, we get it next.
Next. So no, I'm so excited. I will be at the game tomorrow. I am so excited to see the atmosphere. Big game, big moment like that. I remember what it was like for LSU back in 2019. I'm excited to see how our guys respond in the environment, trying to give them all of our energy. I'm probably not going to have my voice when I do my recap tomorrow after the game, wherever it's not going to be from IHOP again.
No, that was great.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
That's dedication right there, Steven.
Awesome.
That was 4:30 a.m. after a bachelor party, man. I still had it in me. So but I appreciate you having me on, Ty. This was awesome, fellas. I love y'all so very much. I appreciate all the relationships and just being able to do this. Again, it's therapy for me. Tough days at work, being able to jump on here with the fellas and talk ball it means the world. So, and everybody in the chat as well. Mark, get my sign on game day, brother. I'm waiting on it.
Well, hey, Rob's got a great idea here. I don't know if you saw it.
What do you have?
Check Rob's comment on the screen.
Wow.
Sick Mark on your brother. Hey, Mark said he gonna eat him alive.
yeah, Mark said
I'll eat him alive.
Get him, Mark.
Get him.
Hey, Mark, that's not a way, Mark.
That's funny as hell.
That's great. Gentlemen, I can't thank you enough for being here. This is something we've got to do far more often. Things have been so wild for me in terms of my house has been in just construction.
Oh, I feel you.
Yeah, it's just been wild. So thankfully, everything's calming down. This is going to have to happen far more often. But this has been such a treat. Guys, if you are from Alabama going to the game tomorrow, if you see Steven from Fanatic Perspective, say what's up. This guy is a great content creator, and that goes for everybody here on the panel. Nino, I can't tell you how many videos of his I reference in my content. I'm still referencing that offensive line video to this day because I use it anytime I get in a debate with somebody about Texas football, and they're like, "Oh, Texas is always recruiting well, but it doesn't matter." I'm just like, did you know there's a video out there by and Homer, you can ask Jance. Every live stream I get, It seems like I'm sitting there just like, guys, you go to Texas Homer's page. You're going to learn a ton. So I can't tell y'all how much it means for me. I completely get what you mean, Steven. This is like therapy for me and everybody in the chat. I can't thank y'all enough for allowing us the opportunity to do this, to connect with y'all and to talk football. It truly is a blessing, and I don't think that's lost on any of us. But I can't wait for what we have after the game. You already know we're going to be messaging each other all game long, trying to get in each other's heads. It's going to be a great time. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see y'all next time. But with that being said, that's it. See y'all.
Peace.